In this video, we'll be breaking down 2 hours of the most disturbing American dad theories to fall asleep to. Let's get started. First up, we've got the theory that Stan actually died after Rapture's delight, and everything that follows is his personal heaven. Christmas morning in the Smith household starts like any other American dad episode. Stan complains about parking at church, Francine wears a dress that makes her look questionable, and the family scrambles to make it to the service on time. Then, Francine drags Stan into a janitor closet for some holiday stress relief. They emerge to find empty piles of clothing scattered everywhere. And boom, the biblical rapture just happened and they missed it because they were too busy getting busy. Steve and Haley floated up to heaven, along with 142 million other people worldwide, and Stan and Francine are stuck on Earth during the literal end of days. Pretty standard Sunday for the Smiths, right? Except here's where things get weird for the show's continuity. Stan dies at the end of this episode. Like, actually dies? The Antichrist shoots him. He sets off a bomb that destroys the villain's headquarters, and he gets escorted to his personalized heaven by Michelle, who previously served as his lawyer during a purgatory trial in an earlier Christmas special. When Michelle shows Stan to his custom-designed eternal paradise, he walks through the door and finds himself right back in his living room on Christmas morning, Francine putting on her new dress. Everything exactly as it was before the rapture happened. The only difference? Klaus, the goldfish, is dead and mounted on a plaque on the wall like a hunting trophy. Stan gets to live out eternity with his family in the exact life he already had, which the episode frames as both sweet and kind of tragic, because this hyperactive CIA agent who constantly chases adventure apparently just wants things to stay exactly the same forever. So here's the million-dollar question that's been bouncing around fan communities since December 2009. Did the show actually kill off Stan Smith in Season 5? And is every episode after this just taking place in his personal heaven? The theory has serious legs when you look at what the episode explicitly shows us. Stan dies in an explosion. An angel guides him to the afterlife. He enters a realm specifically described as his personalized heaven, designed to match his deepest desires. The episode doesn't hit a reset button or wave away the death as a dream. Everything that happens in those final minutes is presented as canonically real within the show's universe. Michelle tells Stan directly that this is his personal heaven and that it reflects what his heart most desires. He walks through that door, and we see him back home with Francine getting ready for church. The episode looping back to its opening moments like nothing ever happened. The DVD commentary for the episode even acknowledges this reading. According to multiple sources documenting the commentary track, the show's producers and writers specifically discussed the idea that everything from this point forward could be interpreted as taking place in Stan's personal heaven. They didn't shut the door on the theory. They left it cracked open, dangling there like a weird Christmas ornament made of existential dread. And if you watch episodes after this one, the theory starts making even more sense. American Dad gets progressively more bizarre and surreal in later seasons. Stan does increasingly absurd things that feel disconnected from any real-world consequences. The show leans harder into science fiction, time travel, and completely bonkers storylines that would make early-season American Dad look grounded by comparison. If Stan's living in his personal heaven where he can do whatever he wants without real stakes, that would explain why the show feels so much more unhinged as it goes on. He's literally living out his fantasies in an eternal playground designed specifically for him. The theory also explains why Stan seems to have plot armor thicker than a Cold War bunker. In a personal heaven, dying would just reset you back to the beginning of your happy loop. The consequences never stick because consequences don't exist in paradise. Every adventure ends with everyone back at the dinner table. Every crisis resolves itself, and nothing fundamentally changes no matter how wild things get. That's not bad writing. That's the eternal loop of heavenly existence. Plus, there's precedent for this kind of storytelling twist in animated shows. Street Elsewhere famously ended with the reveal that the entire series took place in an autistic child's imagination. Newhart ended with Bob Newhart waking up next to his wife from The Bob Newhart Show, implying that his entire second series was a dream. American Dad, doing something similar but with the afterlife instead of imagination or dreams, wouldn't be out of character for a show created by Seth MacFarlane, who loves meta-humor and playing with narrative structure. But here's where the theory hits some massive roadblocks that are harder to explain away than Stan's perpetually restocked CIA weapons closet. Klaus is alive in every episode after this one, like swimming around in his bowl, complaining about things, being his usual bitter German self. In Stan's personalized heaven at the end of the episode, Klaus is explicitly dead and mounted on the wall. The camera deliberately pans to show us Klaus's fish body stuffed and displayed like a deer head in a hunting lodge. It's a visual gag that reinforces how much Stan secretly hates Klaus and would prefer a world without him. If subsequent episodes were really taking place in Stan's heaven, Klaus should stay dead on that wall. But he doesn't. He's back in his bowl in the very next episode, alive and snarky as ever. You could maybe argue that somewhere in the back of Stan's mind, he decided his world needed Klaus after all and thought him back to life. Except that doesn't track with Stan's established character. Stan consistently treats Klaus like an annoyance he tolerates at best. Multiple episodes show Stan fantasizing about Klaus being dead or gone. In one episode, Stan has an extended dream sequence where Klaus gets shot by the Secret Service, and Stan seems pretty happy about it. The idea that Stan would resurrect Klaus in his perfect heaven makes zero sense given their relationship. Then there's Steve and Haley. They were raptured to actual heaven at the beginning of the episode. Steve even got shown his personal heaven, which involved a beautiful virgin riding a unicorn that poops pepperjack cheeseburgers, because of course it does. If Stan's in his personal heaven and the episode is canon, Steve and Haley should still be in actual heaven with God, but they're back on Earth in every subsequent episode, living with the family, going through their normal teenage and young adult problems. How did they get unraptured? The episode provides no explanation for this, and the theory doesn't account for it. The crossover episodes create even bigger problems. American Dad exists in the same universe as Family Guy and The Cleveland Show. There's an episode called Hurricane, where all three families experience the same hurricane. And at the end, Peter Griffin, Stan Smith, and Cleveland Brown all meet in Langley Falls after their houses get blown there. This crossover proves that these shows share a timeline and universe. Neither Family Guy nor The Cleveland Show experienced the rapture. The world didn't end for them. If Stan's been dead and in heaven since 2009, how is he interacting with Peter and Cleveland in a shared reality where the rapture never happened? The only way this works is if Family Guy and The Cleveland Show are also part of Stan's personal heaven, which would mean Stan somehow controls multiple entire universes in his afterlife. That's elevating Stan Smith to literally godlike status, which feels like a stretch even for American Dad. Season 7, Episode 7 throws another wrench into the theory. The episode is called Season's Beatings, and it aired in December 2011, 2 years after Rapture's Delight. In this episode, Jeff adopts a toddler named Nemo, who turns out to be the Antichrist. Not just any Antichrist, but specifically the baby version of the same Antichrist from Rapture's Delight. At the end of the episode, baby Nemo gets sent to Alaska to be raised by Sarah Palin, and in the final scene, he threatens Stan directly, saying, "I'll see you again." Stan Smith, when the rapture comes, his head spins around, he vomits everywhere, and the episode ends. This creates a massive continuity problem for the heaven theory. If Stan is already dead and in heaven after killing the adult Antichrist in Rapture's Delight, why would his perfect eternal paradise include the baby version of that same Antichrist threatening him? Stan literally gave his life to stop this guy. The entire climax of Rapture's Delight centers on Stan sacrificing himself to destroy the Antichrist and end the war. Why would Stan's subconscious create a scenario where he has to deal with that threat all over again? It makes zero sense from a psychological perspective. Your personalized heaven shouldn't include the return of the guy you died stopping. Even weirder, the show treats Season's Beatings as a prequel to Rapture's Delight, even though it aired 2 years later. Father Donovan dies in Season's Beatings, but is alive in Rapture's Delight, which would mean Season's Beatings happens first chronologically. But if episodes after Rapture's Delight take place in Stan's heaven, how can one of those heaven episodes be a prequel to the episode where Stan dies? The timeline gets so tangled here that it basically eats itself. The golden turd adds another layer of confusion. This recurring gag item appears in multiple episodes across American Dad's run, including Rapture's Delight, where Jesus finds it after a battle near Boca Raton and gives it back to Roger to power his spaceship. In Season 15, Episode 21, titled 300, Roger's future self contacts his past self and tells him to hide the turd in Boca Raton after its corruptive influence kills the Smiths. This episode reveals how the turd originally ended up in Boca Raton, seemingly setting up the events of Rapture's Delight through time travel shenanigans. But here's the thing. In Roger's future timeline in 300, the Rapture doesn't happen. The apocalypse gets avoided somehow. If Rapture's Delight is canon and Stan really died, how does a future timeline exist where the Rapture never occurred? Did someone press an undo button on the biblical apocalypse? Stan also dies multiple other times throughout the series. In Season 7, Episode 1, an evil hot tub kills both Stan and Francine. In Season 12, Episode 15, they die from electrocution and briefly end up in heaven before Stan offers his soul to the devil to get them both back to Earth. If Stan's already dead and living in his personal heaven, how can he die again and go to a different heaven or hell? You can't die twice and go to multiple afterlives unless you're playing some weird cosmic video game with infinite lives. These episodes treat death and the afterlife as real, consequential events, not as nested layers of simulation within Stan's eternal paradise. The show's creators have never officially confirmed the theory as canon. While they acknowledged it in DVD commentary as an interesting interpretation, they've continued writing the show in a way that contradicts the theory at almost every turn. American Dad operates on cartoon logic where continuity is flexible and consequences are optional. Episodes can contradict each other, timelines can get screwy, and nothing has to make perfect sense because it's an animated comedy that prioritizes jokes over airtight narrative consistency. This is a show where Roger has 600 personas, time travel happens semi-regularly, and reality itself seems negotiable depending on what the episode needs. That said, the theory remains popular for good reason. Rapture's Delight is one of American Dad's best episodes, pulling off an impressive tonal shift from goofy sitcom to post-apocalyptic action movie and sticking the landing with a genuinely emotional ending. The idea that Stan's personal heaven is just his regular life carries real thematic weight. It suggests that for all his adventures and CIA badassery, what Stan actually wants is the simple comfort of his family and home. That's a surprisingly touching character insight for a show that also features a talking goldfish with a German Olympian's brain. The ending shot of Klaus mounted on the wall is deliberate and specific. The show could have ended with everything looking exactly identical to the opening, but they chose to include that one jarring difference as a visual punchline about Stan's true feelings toward Klaus. It's both funny and slightly unsettling, which is peak American Dad. The fact that fans still debate whether that detail means the theory is true or disproven shows how effectively the episode planted that seed of ambiguity. American Dad has built a reputation for having the loosest continuity of any McFarlane show. Family Guy resets after every episode, but American Dad actively plays with timeline and reality in ways that make continuity basically meaningless. Characters reference events from previous episodes but also contradict them. The show exists in a multiverse of timelines where anything can happen and nothing has to stick. In that context, Rapture's Delight being simultaneously canon and non-canon makes perfect sense. It happened, and also it didn't. Stan died, and also he's still alive. It's Schrodinger's Christmas special. What makes the theory fun is that it doesn't need to be officially true to add value to how you watch the show. Even if the writers never intended for subsequent episodes to take place in Stan's heaven, you can watch them that way and find new layers of meaning in the increasingly absurd adventures. Every weird choice Stan makes becomes him exploring the limits of his perfect world. Every consequence-free ending becomes confirmation that consequences don't exist in paradise. Every return to the status quo becomes the eternal loop resetting itself. The theory transforms American Dad from a random sitcom into a meditation on what it means to be trapped in your idea of perfection forever. But ultimately, the evidence against the theory is stronger than the evidence for it. Klaus being alive is the smoking gun that kills the whole thing. If your personal heaven has a dead Klaus on the wall, and every episode after shows Klaus alive in his bowl, then those episodes can't be taking place in that personal heaven. It's that simple. You could bend over backwards with explanations about why Stan changed his mind or why his heaven evolved, but at that point, you're doing more work than the show ever bothered to do. The theory represents something fans do with beloved shows. finding deeper meaning in details that were probably just jokes or narrative conveniences. Sometimes a dead Klaus is just a dead Klaus, a visual gag about Stan's dislike of his family's pet. Sometimes an ending that loops back to the beginning is just an ending, a way to wrap up a special episode and return to normal. American Dad might be smarter than it looks, but it's also still a comedy about a CIA agent living with an alien and a fish with a human brain. Still, the fact that Rapture's Delight can support this kind of analysis shows how good the episode actually is. It takes real risks, commits to its premise, and delivers genuine emotional moments alongside the comedy and action. Stan keeping the wedding rings over his heart for 7 years of apocalyptic warfare hits hard. His sacrifice to save Francine and Jesus earns his place in heaven in a way that feels earned by the story. The reveal that his heaven is just his normal life recontextualizes his entire character in one visual moment. That's exceptional television, animated or otherwise. Whether Stan died and we've been watching his heaven for 15+ seasons, or the episode was just a really good standalone Christmas special, doesn't actually matter that much in the end. What matters is that American Dad created something memorable enough that fans are still talking about it and building theories around it years later. The show planted enough canonical seeds to make the theory plausible, while including enough contradictions to keep it debatable. That's the sweet spot for fan theories. Enough evidence to make you think, not enough to settle the question forever. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Roger isn't just chaotic, he's a hidden serial killer operating under new skins. Roger, the alien, crashes his spaceship in Roswell in 1947, gets captured and held at Area 51 for decades, saves Stan Smith's life during a security lockdown, and winds up living with the Smith family in their Langley Falls home as payment for the life debt. That's the wholesome backstory American Dad sells you in the early episodes. The fun-loving alien who just wants to wear costumes and drink wine and be part of a family. But when you actually track Roger's body count across the series, a much darker pattern emerges. This gray-skinned extraterrestrial with a Paul Lynde accent is one of television's most prolific serial killers, hiding behind hundreds of personas like a cosmic BTK strangler, collecting new identities every time he changes wigs. The show gives you the evidence right there in plain sight. Season 8, Episode 5, drops the most explicit confession. Roger and Klaus are running an illegal limo service after Roger steals a limousine, and they pick up 5 frat guys who trash the car and skip out on a $20 fare. Roger's response to this minor inconvenience is to systematically hunt down and murder all 5 of them over the course of the episode, plus an entire airplane full of innocent people as collateral damage. When Klaus expresses shock at the scale of the violence, asking if Roger is really going to kill 5 people over $20, Roger delivers the line that should make every viewer realize they're living with a monster. He responds, completely casual, that Klaus is asking this to the guy who just last week killed 6 people over $19. That's 11 confirmed murders in 2 weeks over pocket change. Roger admits this on screen. The show presents it as a joke, but the math is terrifying when you actually do the calculation. If Roger kills 6 people one week and 5 people the next week over amounts of money so trivial that most people wouldn't bother picking them up off the sidewalk, how many people has he killed over things that actually matter to him? Over slights to his ego? Over ruined personas? Over perceived betrayals? The Virtual Insanity episode shows Roger's killing methodology in graphic detail. He runs over the first frat guy with the limo, crushing him against a wall. He mows down 2 more at their friend's funeral, because apparently grief makes you an easier target. The 4th guy tries to hide in a bowling alley bathroom, but Roger finds him and kills him there. The final survivor boards an airplane, thinking he's escaped to safety, only to look out the window mid-flight and see Roger's limousine on the plane's wing. Roger runs him down inside the aircraft, causing the plane and limo to explode and killing almost everyone on board. As Roger and Klaus parachute down from the wreckage, they pass a flight attendant who managed to escape the explosion in her own chute. Roger, experiencing what he describes as bloodlust, undoes her parachute and sends her falling to her death for absolutely no reason except that he enjoyed killing and wanted to keep the feeling going. This is methodical. This is planned. This is someone who knows how to track victims, stage accidents, create elaborate death scenarios, and escape without consequences. Roger doesn't just kill in the heat of the moment. He pursues people across multiple locations over extended periods of time. He sets up elaborate revenge plots that require days or weeks of preparation. He thinks several steps ahead about how to maximize suffering and minimize his chances of getting caught. The Great Space Roaster episode reveals even more about Roger's capacity for mass murder and his complete lack of boundaries when it comes to killing people he supposedly cares about. Roger asks the Smith family to throw him a celebrity roast for his birthday. The family assumes it's going to be a fun comedy event, but after they start making jokes at Roger's expense, he takes everything personally and begins plotting to murder them all. He causes a gas leak to create an explosion in the kitchen. He cuts the brakes on Stan's car. He hires a hitman to shoot them. When the family realizes what's happening and imprisons Roger for their own protection, he kills 24 prison guards and makes a raft out of their corpses to escape. Bangkwang Maximum Security Prison in Thailand then follows the family into space, where he continues trying to murder them. 24 dead guards, their bodies used as flotation devices. Roger did that to continue pursuing a grudge against people who were only doing what he explicitly asked them to do. The roast was his idea. He requested it. They gave him exactly what he wanted, and his response was to try to wipe out the entire Smith family because his feelings got hurt. That level of disproportionate revenge, combined with that body count, puts Roger in the same category as spree killers and family annihilators. But here's what makes Roger even more disturbing than your average serial killer. He doesn't just kill as Roger. He kills through his personas, using them as masks to compartmentalize and distance himself from the murders, while simultaneously indulging every violent impulse without taking psychological responsibility. His worst persona, Ricky Spanish, is basically Roger's Ide, given a costume and a mustache. The show even has people whisper Ricky Spanish in slow motion every time his name gets mentioned, because he's that notorious in Langley Falls. Ricky Spanish's confirmed crimes include burning down a petting zoo with a flamethrower, which likely killed multiple animals and possibly humans. He relieved himself in the open chest cavity of a man during heart surgery, which is both a desecration and potentially a cause of death through infection. He stabbed Bullock's wife through the chest with a katana at her birthday party, killing her in front of everyone. Bullock was so intoxicated that he doesn't even remember it happened, which means Roger literally got away with murdering a CIA director's spouse at a public gathering. Ricky Spanish also admits to being wanted for a series of prostitute murders, making him a confirmed serial killer even within the show's own language. Roger himself describes Ricky Spanish as his worst persona and admits he buried the costume deep in his closet, trying to forget about it because even Roger is terrified of what he becomes when he wears that disguise. When Steve tries to help Roger redeem Ricky Spanish by having him apologize to everyone in town, Roger goes along with it, just long enough to set Steve up as the fall guy for a gene heist, sending Steve to jail for his crimes. That's what Roger does. He uses people, discards them, and leaves them holding the bag for his atrocities. The Persona Assistant episode proves that Ricky Spanish is so dangerous that even the costume itself seems to carry a corrupting influence. When Roger gets sick and asks Stan to temporarily take over his personas, Stan treats most of them as jokes until he puts on the Ricky Spanish disguise to solve a mob problem. The costume transforms Stan into a violent anarchist who starts killing mob bosses and unleashing chaos across Langley Falls. Stan, a CIA agent trained in violence and restraint, completely loses control the moment he becomes Ricky Spanish. The show frames this almost like demonic possession, where the persona takes over and amplifies the worst impulses of whoever wears it. But here's the thing, Roger created that persona. Roger decided what Ricky Spanish would be. All that evil came from Roger's mind, and Roger performed those murders before he ever buried the costume. Roger's other personas also engage in murder and extreme violence, just with different styles and motivations. One of his personas is wanted for running a sweatshop. Another ran protection rackets. At least one persona self-identifies as a serial killer in dialogue. Roger has personas that are mob enforcers, corrupt cops, drug traffickers, child abusers, and con artists who destroy lives for fun. He uses these identities to compartmentalize his crimes so thoroughly that sometimes he doesn't even remember what his personas have done until someone reminds him. In Season 13's Death by Dinner Party, the show plays with murder, mystery tropes, and while the episode is mostly a fake-out, it confirms something important. everyone at the dinner party immediately suspects Roger might be a killer because Roger has that reputation even among his closest friends. They know what he's capable of. They've seen the bodies pile up. When people start disappearing during the dinner party, Roger is the first person they blame because, of course, it would be Roger. He's killed before. He'll kill again. It's practically his defining characteristic at this point in the series. The show also confirms that Roger killed Kevin Bacon, or rather, Roger stole Kevin Bacon's nose to impersonate him and get free stuff around town, then got drunk, committed a hit and run that killed a pedestrian, and let the real Kevin Bacon get arrested and convicted for vehicular manslaughter. Roger frames a celebrity for murder and feels zero remorse about it. Kevin Bacon goes to prison for Roger's crime, and Roger just moves on to the next persona like it never happened. Roger buried Francine alive in the Merlot Down Dirty Shame episode. He kissed her while drunk, panicked when she said she'd tell Stan, and decided the easiest solution was to drug her, fake her death, put her in a coffin, and bury her 6 feet under. Only after Francine is already in the ground does Roger realize he doesn't actually have a plan and has to dig her back up, at which point he reveals the whole thing was actually about stealing her hair to make a wig. He was willing to kill Francine, let her suffocate underground, and traumatize the entire family just to avoid an awkward conversation and acquire wig material. In Love American Dad style, Roger develops an obsession with Haley and decides to skin her alive like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. When shooting Haley doesn't satisfy him, he kidnaps her, ties her up, and prepares to literally remove her skin while she's alive. At the last second, Roger changes his mind and skins Jeff instead, which the show plays as Roger being merciful since Jeff survives the skinning through cartoon logic. But Roger was absolutely prepared to murder his best friend's daughter by removing her skin in strips. That's not chaos. That's not random alien weirdness. That's premeditated torture murder with a specific sexual sadism component. The 100 AD episode celebrates the show's 100th episode by having Roger literally serve as the Grim Reaper figure who kills 100 characters over the course of 22 minutes. The episode treats this as a milestone achievement, with Roger appearing as death itself and systematically working through a list of victims. The show is explicitly telling you that Roger is death. Roger is murder. Roger is the entity that brings fatal violence to Langley Falls on an industrial scale. The 200 episode takes place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland caused by an energy burst that released 200 of Roger's personas simultaneously, which shut down power worldwide and turned civilization into a nuclear holocaust situation. Roger's personas escaping containment literally ended the world. His compartmentalized identities caused mass death across the entire planet. The episode treats this apocalypse as canon, meaning Roger is directly responsible for potentially billions of deaths through negligence and his inability to control his own psychological fragmentation. Roger's alien biology provides some context but absolutely no excuse for his behavior. The show establishes in Franny 911 that Roger's species must let out their bitchiness and negativity or it turns into poison that kills them. This is supposed to explain why Roger is so mean and selfish. But there's a massive difference between being bitchy and being a serial killer. Plenty of characters on television are rude, self-centered, and emotionally abusive without racking up triple-digit body counts. Roger takes his biological need to express negativity and uses it as carte blanche to commit every crime imaginable, including mass murder, torture, psychological abuse, sexual assault, human trafficking, and genocide in alternate timelines. The show also confirms Roger ate his own father when he was 15 years old, keeping bits of his leg as souvenirs. That's patricide and cannibalism. Roger killed and consumed his own parent as a teenager, which suggests his violent tendencies started early and have only escalated over his centuries of life on Earth. If Roger was killing family members as an adolescent alien, imagine what he's been doing for the 60+ years he's been on this planet before the Smith family found him. What makes Roger truly terrifying as a serial killer is that he's essentially immune to consequences. His alien physiology makes him resistant to human ailments, gives him superhuman abilities like speed and strength, and allows him to survive injuries that would kill normal people. He can be killed by decapitation according to the show's canon, but good luck getting close enough to Roger's neck when he can move at superhuman speed, has fought off entire prison populations, and has access to CIA-level weapons and resources through his connection to Stan. Roger also has the perfect camouflage for a serial killer. His personas make him virtually undetectable. When Roger commits murder as Ricky Spanish, the police look for Ricky Spanish, not for a gray alien living in the Smith household. When Roger kills someone as Kevin Bacon takes the fall. Every persona is a disposable identity that Roger can abandon the moment it becomes inconvenient, and he has hundreds of them in rotation. He's like a serial killer with hundreds of fake identities, except instead of needing to forge documents and create elaborate backstories, Roger just changes wigs, and everyone believes he's a completely different person despite his gray skin, bizarre anatomy, and the fact that Langley Falls is a small enough town that everyone should recognize the same weird alien face under every costume. The show even acknowledges this explicitly in Persona Assistant when Roger gets sick and can't maintain his personas, causing Langley Falls to descend into immediate chaos and violence because Roger's personas are integral to the town's social cohesion. The police chief, the judge's wife, the rollerblade cobbler, the Italian mobster, the Russian mobster, the Irish mobster, all Roger. The town's entire infrastructure is infiltrated by a single alien playing dozens of roles simultaneously, which means Roger has his hands in every aspect of civic life and can manipulate everything from law enforcement to organized crime to the judicial system itself. He's not just a serial killer. He's a serial killer who controls the institutions that would normally investigate serial killers. Roger's relationship with the Smith family is essentially them harboring a known murderer and pretending everything is normal because they owe him a life debt and because, on some level, they're terrified of what Roger would do if they tried to turn him in or kick him out. Stan works for the CIA. Stan knows what Roger is capable of. Stan has watched Roger commit murders, frame innocent people, destroy lives over petty grudges, and threaten to kill the entire family multiple times. And Stan keeps Roger in the house because Roger saved his life once and because the alternative is having Roger as an enemy, which based on Roger's established pattern of behavior would result in Stan and everyone Stan loves dying in elaborately cruel ways. The show plays this for comedy. Roger's murders are accompanied by upbeat music. His victims are usually annoying or unsympathetic. The violence is cartoonish enough that it doesn't feel real, even though the show confirms these people actually died. But when you strip away the comedy framing and look at the actual events being depicted, you're watching a serial killer operate in plain sight, protected by a family who knows exactly what he is and chooses to enable him rather than face the consequences of stopping him. Roger fits every characteristic of a serial killer from criminal psychology. He has a pattern of repeat murders over extended periods of time. He experiences cooling off periods between killings where he seems normal before the urge strikes again. He escalates over time, with his body counts growing larger and his methods becoming more elaborate and theatrical. He keeps trophies. His personas are essentially souvenirs of his crimes, costumes, and identities he can revisit whenever he wants, to relive the feeling of being that version of himself who did those terrible things. He displays a lack of empathy and remorse, viewing other people as objects to be used and discarded. He exhibits grandiosity and narcissism, believing he's special and above normal rules. He manipulates people easily, lying and deceiving without hesitation. He compartmentalizes his crimes through his personas, creating psychological distance between his actions and his sense of self. Roger's personas are not just disguises, they're hunting skins. They're the false faces a predator wears to get close to prey. And the truly disturbing part is that Roger has been doing this for so long, with so many victims, that he's lost count himself. The show hints at this in episodes where Roger encounters people he wronged as various personas and doesn't remember them at all. He's killed so many people, ruined so many lives, destroyed so many families that individual victims blur together into an undifferentiated mass of past crimes. The scariest part is knowing Roger will never stop. His alien biology means he could live for thousands more years. His personas give him unlimited identities to hide behind. His connection to the Smith family gives him protection from law enforcement and government agencies. His superhuman abilities make him nearly impossible to kill. and his complete lack of remorse means he sees no reason to change his behavior. Every week brings new disguises, new schemes, new victims. The body count will keep climbing as long as Roger keeps breathing, and nobody can stop him because nobody wants to face what it would take to actually bring down an alien serial killer who's integrated himself into every level of society. American Dad has been running for over 300 episodes. If Roger kills 6 people in 1 week over $19 and 5 people the next week over $20, and those are just the casual murders he commits over nothing, how many people has Roger killed over the course of 300 episodes worth of schemes, grudges, persona-related violence, and elaborate revenge plots? The number has to be in the thousands at minimum. Roger might be one of the highest body count characters in animated television history, and everyone treats him like the zany comic relief alien instead of the systematic murderer he actually is. The evidence is all there in canon. Roger admits to serial killing, he confesses to specific murders, he's shown on screen committing elaborate homicides. His personas are documented as wanted criminals for multiple homicides. The show even makes him death itself for a milestone episode. But because it's wrapped in jokes and cartoon violence and wine-drinking alien shenanigans, viewers laugh instead of recognizing that they're watching one of television's most prolific serial killers operate with complete impunity, season after season, episode after episode, body after body. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that the golden turd is a cursed metaplot that corrupts free will. Roger poops a jewel-encrusted golden turd in Season 1, Episode 6 of American Dad. And from that moment forward, the show tracks this single piece of alien feces across 15 years of television as it destroys every single person who touches it. This is not a joke subplot that gets forgotten after one episode. This is a meticulously planned narrative spanning multiple seasons, showing up in brief segments scattered across dozens of episodes, following the turd as it passes from victim to victim like a cursed artifact straight out of horror mythology. And the evidence is explicit. The golden turd does not just tempt people into bad behavior. It actively corrupts and twists the human mind, overriding free will and transforming good people into murderers who destroy everything they love for a piece of literal shit. The pattern establishes itself immediately in the first appearance. Jim and Mikey, 2 electrical workers, find the golden turd at a power station after Roger and Steve crash there. These are normal guys doing their job, best friends working together, no indication they're violent or unstable. The moment Jim sees the turd, something changes. He picks it up, looks at it, and within seconds, he's beating Mikey to death with it. Best friend becomes murder victim in the time it takes for greed to override 15 years of friendship. Jim doesn't wrestle with the decision. He doesn't gradually descend into temptation. The turd activates something in his brain, and he kills immediately, hiding Mikey's body in his truck and driving away. But here's where the curse reveals its full cruelty. Jim calls his fiancée Abby to tell her they're rich now, that the turd will change their lives. Another man answers the phone. Abby's been cheating on him. Jim killed his best friend for a golden turd, and his reward is discovering his entire future was a lie. The episode ends with Jim sobbing in anguish at a gas station, holding the turd that cost him everything. The show presents this in cinematic widescreen with dramatic music and slow pacing, treating it like a Greek tragedy instead of animated comedy. This is not played for laughs. This is the first demonstration that the golden turd is a narrative force that destroys lives systematically. Episode 2 of the saga shows Jim's guilt consuming him. He agonizes over killing Mikey, over what the turd made him do, until he can't take it anymore and drives his truck onto railroad tracks, letting a train obliterate him and the guilt together. That's the golden turd's body count at 2 victims, 1 murder, 1 suicide. But the turd survives the train crash intact, because of course it does. Cursed objects don't get destroyed by something as mundane as a freight train. Lieutenant Eddie Thacker investigates the accident scene. He's a cop 1 week away from retirement, the classic television trope of a good man about to escape the job and live peacefully with his wife. Eddie finds the golden turd in the wreckage and immediately hides it from his partner, taking it home instead of logging it as evidence. He shows it to his wife Marilyn, and they talk about retirement and a house in Boca Raton, the life they've earned after decades of service. But Eddie starts having second thoughts. He recognizes something is wrong. He literally says out loud that he believes the gold is affecting them, that they need to turn it in and face the consequences. Marilyn seems to agree. She accepts his decision. Then she makes tea and adds rat poison to Eddie's cup. The show emphasizes this detail. Boca Raton translates from Spanish as rat mouth, turning the poisoning into a linguistic prophecy. Marilyn kills her husband of decades, the man she planned to retire with, because the golden turd will not allow itself to be returned. It overrides love, overrides decades of partnership, overrides Marilyn's own horror at what she's doing. Eddie drinks the poisoned tea and dies. Body count: 3 murders, 1 suicide. Marilyn gets caught. The state of Virginia executes her for murdering Eddie. Her son, Vincent Edmonds, returns to the family home, grieving both parents lost to violence, preparing for his election campaign for Attorney General. A kid gets hit by a car outside the house. Vincent's about to run out and help when he steps on a loose floorboard and discovers the golden turd hidden underneath. He stops moving toward the injured child. He stops caring that a kid is hurt and crying outside. He puts the golden turd in his suit pocket and ignores the screams. The corruption happens in seconds. Vincent was about to help an injured child. The moment he sees the turd, the child stops mattering. Only the turd matters. Vincent swore he would never get involved with Wyatt Borden, a corrupt chemical polluter, that he'd rather lose the election than compromise his principles. 5 minutes after finding the golden turd, Vincent is on the phone making deals with Wyatt, gazing at the turd while Wyatt calls him Mr. President. The turd transformed Vincent's entire value system in the time it takes to make a phone call. Everything he stood for, everything he believed, gone, replaced by pure obsession with the object in his pocket. Season 12, Episode 1 shows Vincent as Senator Thacker during the political primary, his campaign in full swing. His running mate Bill Sturgis confronts him about his increasingly erratic behavior. Vincent's obsession with the turd has become so obvious that his closest political ally notices something is deeply wrong. They argue. Bill sees the golden turd. They fight over it physically. Vincent dies when Bill breaks his jaw with the turd itself, the object literally becoming the murder weapon. Bill lifts the turd in victory, finally possessing the thing that cost Vincent everything, and Secret Service agents burst into the room. Bill lunges at them. They fire multiple rounds. Bill dies, clutching the turd. Body count: 7 murders, 1 suicide, 1 state execution. A cleaning woman finds the golden turd and recognizes its significance. She doesn't keep it. She doesn't succumb to its corruption. She bundles it up and takes it to the Vatican, presenting it to the Pope himself. This moment is crucial because it proves that some people can recognize the turd for what it is without being corrupted, which means the corruption is selective or requires specific psychological vulnerabilities. The cleaning woman saw what it did to Vincent and Bill and understood she was holding evil made manifest. The Pope presents the golden turd before a council of world religious leaders, the Dalai Lama, Beyoncé, and leaders from every major religion on Earth, gathering to discuss what to do with this prophesized object. The show reveals through ancient stone tablets that Roger and the golden turd have appeared in human mythology for thousands of years, depicted in Egyptian hieroglyphics showing Roger astride pyramids. This turd has been corrupting humanity since ancient times. This is not a new phenomenon. The golden turd has been destroying civilizations for millennia, appearing and disappearing through history, leaving trails of bodies wherever it surfaces. The religious leaders discuss the turd's power, which is stated explicitly in dialogue. It has the ability to corrupt and twist the human mind. This is canon. The show directly tells the audience that the golden turd possesses supernatural corrupting properties that override normal human decision-making. The world leaders know the only way to destroy it is to return it to its source, to shove it back up Roger's ass, which will seal the evil and restore peace to Earth. But they can't do it themselves, because even the Pope, even the Dalai Lama, even the most spiritually enlightened humans on the planet fall under the turd's influence. They start squabbling. They start fighting. The council descends into a shootout where religious leaders murder each other over possession of a literal piece of alien shit. The Pope dies, world religious leaders die. All because nobody can resist the golden turd's corruption once they see it. The Knights Turdlar, an ancient order tasked with protecting humanity from the turd's influence, observe these events and realize they need a chosen one, someone immune to the turd's corrupting power. They find a delivery girl who can hold the golden turd without succumbing to greed or violence. This proves the turd's corruption is an active supernatural force that affects most humans but not all, like a curse that requires specific conditions to take hold. The Chosen One delivers the turd to Roger in Langley Falls and successfully shoves it back up his ass, returning it to its source. Roger immediately explodes into 300 pieces. His body fragments scatter across the entire planet. The moment the turd returns to Roger's body, a wave of light circles the Earth and transforms the world into instant utopia. War ends, poverty ends, crime ends. Humanity ascends to peace and enlightenment. The show explicitly confirms that the golden turd's presence in the world was the only thing preventing humanity from achieving paradise. Roger's alien feces contained enough corrupting evil to keep the entire planet trapped in violence and suffering. Remove the turd from circulation, and humans immediately become enlightened beings living in harmony. But the Smith family gets bored with utopia. They decide they want Roger back. They travel around the world, collecting all 300 pieces of Roger's fragmented body so they can reassemble him. The final piece is Roger's butthole, which they can only win by appearing on Family Feud and defeating Steve Harvey in Fast Money. They succeed. Reassemble Roger, insert the final piece, and the golden turd falls out of Roger's body once again. Steve Harvey immediately grabs it, declaring plans to use its power to put Family Feud on every channel and rule the world. Stan knocks him out and takes the turd, claiming he intends to destroy it. Stan does not destroy it. The show jumps 20 years into the future to reveal what really happened. The Smith family split apart completely, each member living in isolation, their only connection to each other being their shared obsession with possessing the golden turd. Stan lives alone in paranoid squalor, having hidden the turd somewhere the others can't find it. Steve tracks Haley to a parking garage. Haley crushes Steve to death between two cars to prevent him from getting to the turd first. Francine snipes Haley from a building across the street. Stan confronts Francine in an abandoned room. She shoots him in the head with a nail gun. Francine thinks she's won, but her scarf gets caught in a table saw and snaps her neck, killing her instantly. The entire Smith family murders each other over the course of one sequence. Roger finds them all dead, weeping over the bodies of the people who were his family for 15 years. The golden turd corrupted even the Smiths, the protagonists of the show. The family we've watched bond and grow and survive hundreds of adventures together. None of that mattered. The moment the turd entered their lives directly, instead of appearing in brief side segments, it destroyed them as completely as it destroyed Jim and Mikey, Eddie and Marilyn, Vincent and Bill. The curse doesn't care about protagonist status or plot armor or the power of family. The curse only cares about corruption and death. Roger's tears fall on the golden turd and create a time portal back to the day he first laid it. Roger tells his past self to hide the turd before anyone finds it, to prevent the entire chain of murders and suffering before it starts. Past Roger hides the golden turd inside a rigged claw machine in an arcade in Boca Raton, ensuring nobody will ever retrieve it. The timeline resets. Jim and Mikey never find the turd. Eddie never brings it home. Vincent never discovers it under the floorboards. The Smith family never tears itself apart. Every death caused by the golden turd gets undone when Roger removes it from the timeline. Except the show makes it very clear that the turd still exists, locked in that claw machine, waiting. The curse is not destroyed, it's just delayed. Sealed evil in a can, sitting in an arcade somewhere in Florida, one successful claw grab away from starting the entire cycle of corruption and murder all over again. The golden turd works exactly like cursed objects from classical mythology and horror fiction. It functions like the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, corrupting whoever possesses it into betraying everything they value for the sake of keeping the object. It operates like the Lament configuration from Hellraiser, a puzzle box that seems valuable but actually opens doorways to suffering. It mirrors the videotape from The Ring, a cursed object that kills everyone who encounters it and can only be escaped by passing it to the next victim. But unlike most cursed objects in fiction, the golden turd has explicit supernatural mind control properties confirmed by the show's own canon dialogue. The religious leaders in episode 300 state directly that the turd has the power to corrupt and twist the human mind. This is not metaphorical corruption through temptation. This is literal supernatural mental manipulation. People see the turd and their brains change. Their priorities restructure themselves around possession of the object. Their moral frameworks collapse. Their relationships become disposable. Everything that made them human gets overridden by a single imperative: keep the turd. Jim murders his best friend within seconds of finding it. Eddie recognizes he's being affected and tries to resist. Marilyn seems to accept returning it until the moment she decides to kill instead. Vincent ignores a screaming injured child. Bill attacks armed Secret Service agents despite knowing he'll die. Religious leaders trained in discipline and enlightenment murder each other in the Vatican. Stan lets his family kill each other over 20 years while he lives in paranoid isolation. Every victim follows the same pattern: initial contact, immediate obsession, escalating paranoia, willingness to murder, inevitable death. The only people who resist are the chosen one delivery girl and the cleaning woman who took it to the Vatican, suggesting the corruption requires specific psychological vulnerabilities or that certain rare individuals have natural immunity. But the vast majority of humans have no defense. The golden turd rewrites their brain chemistry and they become murder victims or murderers, often both in sequence. The show treats golden turd segments differently from normal episodes. They appear in cinematic widescreen letterbox format instead of standard television framing. They use dramatic orchestral music instead of comedy scoring. They employ slow pacing and artistic cinematography. They feature characters who never interact with the main cast and exist solely to be corrupted and destroyed by the turd before passing it along to the next victim. These segments function as a horror anthology series embedded inside an animated comedy, each installment showing a new group of people discovering the turd and destroying their lives for it. This narrative structure spans 15 years of television, from Season 1, Episode 6 inches, 2005, to Season 17, Episode 21 inches, 2020, 15 years. Across over 300 episodes of American Dad, the writers maintained this single continuous narrative thread, advancing the golden turd's journey from victim to victim in brief segments that appeared maybe once per season. That level of long-term planning and commitment to a subplot is virtually unprecedented in animated comedy. Family Guy has cutaway gags, The Simpsons has Halloween specials, but American Dad created an actual multi-season myth arc about a cursed piece of alien feces that destroys free will and murdered every person who touched it across 15 years of real-time production. And the show confirms the turd's corrupting influence was preventing world peace. The moment it gets sealed back inside Roger, humanity achieves utopia. All the wars, all the poverty, all the crime, all the suffering on Earth existed because Roger's bowel movement was circulating through human civilization, turning good people into killers. The golden turd was not just destroying individuals, it was maintaining global evil as an active supernatural force preventing human enlightenment. Which raises the question, is Roger aware of what his turds do? He acts surprised when he sees the devastation in episode 300, crying over his dead family. But Roger's been alive for over 60 years on Earth, and presumably hundreds of years before that on his home planet. He knows he poops golden jewel-encrusted turds. Has he left other turds scattered across history? Are there golden turds hidden around the world still corrupting people Roger doesn't know about? The Egyptian hieroglyphics showing Roger on pyramids suggest he's been on Earth far longer than 60 years, that he's appeared throughout human history. How many turds has he deposited across millennia? How much of human violence and suffering traces back to people finding Roger's ancient alien feces and losing their minds to supernatural corruption? The Golden Turd Saga is American Dad, confirming that one of its central characters involuntarily produces cursed objects that override free will and cause murder chains across generations. Roger is not malicious about this. He doesn't weaponize his turds or deliberately spread corruption, but his biology creates artifacts of concentrated evil that rewrite human neurology on contact. He's a walking factory for cursed items, producing objects of power that humanity has no defense against, leaving them scattered wherever he happens to defecate. The show wrapped up the Golden Turd storyline in episode 300 by having Roger hide it from history, preventing the murders, undoing the timeline. But it's still there in that claw machine in Boca Raton, waiting. The curse is not broken. The supernatural corruption is not destroyed. It's just contained, sealed, delayed. One mechanical failure, one lucky kid, one drunk college student managing to beat the rigged claw game, and the entire cycle starts again. Jim and Mikey, Eddie and Marilyn, Vincent and Bill, the Smith family tearing each other apart. all of it waiting to happen again the moment someone pulls a bejeweled golden turd out of an arcade machine and feels their free will collapse into a single overwhelming need to possess it forever, no matter who they have to kill. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Langley Falls is a CIA petri dish, not a normal town. Langley Falls looks like a normal American suburb at first glance. Tree-lined streets, a high school, a mall, neighbors who throw block parties. The Smith family lives there like any other family, except Stan works for the CIA and commutes to Langley, Virginia, where the real CIA headquarters sits. But when you track what actually happens in Langley Falls across 300 episodes of American Dad, a disturbing pattern emerges. This town functions as an active testing ground for CIA experiments, operations, and controlled scenarios. The evidence is explicit, repeated, and constantly reinforced by the show's own canon. Langley Falls is not a community. It's a laboratory with residential zoning where the CIA runs tests on American citizens without their knowledge or consent. The town's name itself is the first clue. Langley Falls combines two real Virginia locations: Langley, where CIA headquarters actually exists in real life, and Great Falls, an unincorporated community in Fairfax County. The show literally named the town after the CIA's home base and positioned it close enough to headquarters that Stan can commute. This is not subtle. The creators designed a fictional municipality that exists specifically to serve as the residential area for CIA personnel and their operations. Everyone who lives in Langley Falls either works for the CIA, is related to someone who works for the CIA, or is unknowingly participating in CIA activities because they happen to live in the agency's backyard. Stan casually uses CIA resources for personal projects throughout the series, and nobody in Langley Falls seems to find this unusual. In Best Little Horror House in Langley Falls, Stan wants to win the neighborhood's scariest haunted house competition. When his decorations fail to impress, he goes to Roger for advice, and Roger tells him to use his CIA influence to get real body parts and torture instruments. Stan's response is not to question whether this is appropriate or legal. His response is to immediately pull 5 of the most dangerous serial killers from CIA custody and bring them to his suburban home to sit in cells as haunted house attractions. Think about what this means. The CIA has multiple serial killers in custody somewhere near Langley Falls. These are not federal prisoners in maximum security facilities. These are active murderers that a mid-level CIA agent can check out like library books for a Halloween party. Stan brings them to his residential neighborhood, puts them in cells in his house, and none of his neighbors question where he got 5 serial killers. Roger releases them, and they go on a killing spree through the neighborhood, and the episode treats this as a personal family problem rather than a massive security breach that should involve federal investigations and congressional hearings. The casual availability of serial killers for home use reveals something fundamental about Langley Falls. The CIA has infrastructure in this town that allows agents to access dangerous criminals, experimental weapons, classified technology, and top-secret materials for personal use without oversight. Stan is not a high-ranking official. He's a field agent. If Stan can casually borrow serial killers, what can Deputy Director Bullock do? What resources are other CIA employees using on Langley Falls residents without their knowledge? The Dance in A With My Cell episode makes the experimental nature of Langley Falls explicitly canon. Stan goes to the CIA lab and discovers gene splicing experiments happening on site, not theoretical research. Active gene modification technology advanced enough that Stan can use it on his own family. He subjects Steve, Haley, and Francine to genetic alterations that change their physical appearance and personalities, turning them more aggressive and competitive. The experiments work immediately, with no trial period, no safety testing, no informed consent. But here's the critical detail. When the genetically modified Smith family goes out into Langley Falls, they spread their altered genes to the entire town through casual contact. The whole population of Langley Falls gets infected with Stan's genetic modifications, turning everyone in town aggressive and violent. Stan has to return to the CIA lab, where scientist Matt has already prepared gene-altered mosquitoes as a countermeasure, and they release swarms of genetically modified insects into the town to reverse the changes and return everyone to normal. The CIA had gene-altering mosquitoes ready to deploy on the civilian population. Matt prepared them as a solution to a problem that just started happening. This means the CIA either predicted this specific scenario or has standard protocols for deploying genetic modification vectors on Langley Falls residents. Either option confirms that Langley Falls functions as a genetics testing site, where the CIA maintains the ability to alter the DNA of every person in town and monitor the results. Nobody in Langley Falls files lawsuits after this incident. Nobody contacts the media. Nobody moves away or demands investigations into how the entire town got genetically modified without consent. The episode ends with everything back to normal and zero consequences for anyone involved. This pattern repeats constantly. The CIA does something to Langley Falls residents, the victims experience the consequences, and then everyone just continues with their lives as if involuntary genetic experimentation is a normal part of suburban living. The weather in Langley Falls is controlled by the CIA. This is confirmed in the episode Anchor Fran, where Stan calls Dick at CIA Weather Control and requests a Category 6 subpolar tornado cane to force two weathermen back together. Dick launches the storm, which wreaks havoc across Langley Falls. The CIA has weather control technology that can generate specific types of devastating storms on demand, and agents like Stan can request these storms for personal reasons, like manipulating local news anchor relationships. Weather control is a conspiracy theory in the real world, something people argue about without evidence. In American Dad's universe, the CIA absolutely has weather control technology. They use it on Langley Falls regularly, and the show explicitly confirms this, with dialogue and visual confirmation of the CIA weather control facility operating through chemtrails, wind turbines, and other devices. Every storm that hits Langley Falls could be natural or could be a CIA test. Residents have no way to know if the hurricane destroying their homes came from atmospheric conditions or from Dick's console at CIA Weather Control. This means the CIA controls every environmental variable in Langley Falls. Temperature, precipitation, severe weather events, all of it potentially manipulated for operational purposes. If the CIA wants to test how a community responds to disaster conditions, they can generate those conditions artificially and observe the results. Langley Falls is a town where the fundamental forces of nature answer to CIA agents filling out requisition forms. Stan takes over the local television station WANG Studios after convincing the Senate that television causes masturbation. He just walks in and takes control of the station's broadcasting because he's CIA, and he decided the content needs CIA oversight. The local news anchors, Greg and Terry, are also Stan's neighbors, which means the people reporting news in Langley Falls live directly across the street from a CIA agent who can commandeer their employer at will. There is no independent press in Langley Falls. There is no news coverage that the CIA cannot monitor or suppress or control. Every major institution in Langley Falls is either run by the CIA or subject to CIA interference. The police defer to CIA agents. The schools allow CIA agents to run tests on students. The hospital treats injuries from CIA operations without reporting them to authorities. The local government operates under CIA oversight. This is not a town with normal civic infrastructure. This is a company town, where the company is an intelligence agency with unlimited black budget funding and no external accountability. Stan's boss, Avery Bullock, appears constantly in Langley Falls, despite being the deputy director of the CIA. He goes to the same mall, eats at the same restaurants, shows up at neighborhood events. This is the second highest ranking official in America's intelligence apparatus, just wandering around a suburban Virginia town like he's a local. Bullock lives in or near Langley Falls. Multiple CIA executives and countless field agents all live in this same town. The concentration of intelligence personnel in Langley Falls would make it the most heavily CIA-populated municipality in America outside of Langley, Virginia itself. This is not an accident. The CIA concentrated its personnel in Langley Falls deliberately. When you have an entire town full of CIA agents, contractors, scientists, and their families, you have a built-in test population for any operation that requires civilian participation. Need to test a new surveillance system? Deploy it in Langley Falls, where half the population has security clearances and the other half is already compromised. Need to run a psychological operation? Use Langley Falls, where you can control the variables and monitor the results through your agents' direct observations of their neighbors. The show reveals through multiple episodes that entire plot lines are actually undercover CIA operations that Stan and sometimes the audience are unaware of until the end. A TV Tropes entry notes that one episode's entire plot is revealed to be an undercover CIA operation to test Mount Rushmore's missile defense system. Stan participated in the events without knowing he was part of a CIA test. If Stan, an active CIA agent, can be used as an unwitting participant in CIA operations, how many Langley Falls civilians are participating in tests without knowing? Roger's personas have become integral to Langley Falls' social infrastructure, and Roger explicitly states this in the Persona Assistant episode. When Roger gets sick and can't maintain his personas, the entire town descends into chaos. The police chief, the judge's wife, the town cobbler, organized crime leaders, all of them are Roger in disguise. An alien living with a CIA agent has infiltrated every level of civic society in Langley Falls, playing dozens of roles simultaneously, and the CIA allows this because it serves their interests. Roger is not just chaos, Roger is controlled chaos. Stan knows Roger infiltrates everything. Bullock knows an alien lives in Langley Falls with full access to CIA technology and resources. They allow this because Roger serves as an additional layer of CIA control over the town. When the CIA needs deniable operations, they have an alien with unlimited disguises who can become anyone and do anything without leaving a paper trail back to the agency. Roger is a CIA asset, whether he knows it or not, and Langley Falls is his operational territory. The retirement community in Langley Falls has a sign that reads, "Langley Falls Retirement Villas, a wonderful place to be forgotten." That is not marketing language. That is a threat. The CIA puts retired agents and inconvenient witnesses in Langley Falls retirement homes where they can be monitored, controlled, and if necessary, forgotten. Stan's own father ended up there before he died. The retirement home is not a care facility. It's CIA asset storage. Schools in Langley Falls operate under CIA influence. Pearl Bailey High School, where Steve attends, has Principal Brian Lewis running the institution. Lewis is incredibly unprofessional, hedonistic, and openly corrupt, which suggests either the CIA allows this because Lewis serves their purposes, or Lewis himself is under CIA control through blackmail or other leverage. The school system produces students who never question why their town has serial killers in residential neighborhoods, genetic experiments spreading through the population, or whether being controlled by government agencies. That level of normalized acceptance requires systematic educational conditioning. The entire economy of Langley Falls depends on the CIA. Stan's salary supports his family. Bullock's budget funds local contracts. CIA operations require support staff, catering, equipment, facilities, all of which get purchased from Langley Falls businesses. The town exists economically because the CIA exists. If the CIA relocated, Langley Falls would collapse. This gives the CIA ultimate economic power over every business owner, every employee, every property owner in town. Nobody can risk opposing the CIA because the CIA controls whether they can pay their mortgage. Multiple episodes show Stan bringing experimental CIA technology home without permission. He uses CIA equipment to solve family problems constantly. The show plays this for comedy, but the underlying reality is terrifying. If mid-level agents can walk out of CIA facilities with experimental weapons, mind control devices, genetic modification tools, and classified materials, and use them on civilian populations without oversight, then the CIA has no internal security. Or more accurately, the CIA has no internal security because they want agents field testing experimental technology on Langley Falls residents. Every weird event that happens in Langley Falls can be traced back to CIA activity, either directly or through Stan's connection to CIA resources. The town experiences alien encounters, time travel, genetic mutations, parallel dimensions, supernatural events, and reality warping scenarios at a rate that would be statistically impossible for a normal suburban community. But Langley Falls is not normal. Langley Falls is where the CIA tests everything they don't want visible in legitimate research facilities. The show reveals in various episodes that the CIA has facilities for mind control research, human experimentation, weapons testing, paranormal investigation, time manipulation, and dimensional travel. All of this infrastructure exists near or within Langley Falls. Stan accesses these facilities for personal use. These facilities require test subjects. Where do those test subjects come from? How many Langley Falls residents have participated in CIA experiments without their knowledge? The Langley Falls police have mob connections according to one episode's details. The garbage collection service is run by organized crime, but Stan and Bullock walk through town without concern about criminal elements because the criminal elements are either controlled opposition or CIA-infiltrated operations. A town with mob-connected police and organized crime waste management that the CIA allows to operate is a town where the CIA has decided that controlled crime serves intelligence purposes better than actual law enforcement. When Langley Falls faces genuine threats like serial killers escaping custody or genetic plagues spreading through the population, the response comes from the CIA, not from law enforcement or emergency services. The CIA fixes CIA problems in Langley Falls, which means the CIA views Langley Falls problems as internal operational issues rather than crimes against civilians. The residents are not citizens with rights. They're variables in ongoing experiments, assets to be managed, test subjects who happen to have houses and jobs. The show repeatedly demonstrates that Stan can get away with anything in Langley Falls because he has CIA backing. He can commit crimes, endanger civilians, destroy property, violate civil rights, and the local authorities cannot touch him because he outranks them through CIA authority. This works because Langley Falls operates under CIA jurisdiction rather than normal civilian law enforcement. The town has the appearance of democratic governance with elected officials and police departments, but the real power structure flows through the CIA. Bullock himself demonstrates the CIA's attitude toward Langley Falls in multiple episodes. He treats the town like his personal playground, pursuing romantic interests, causing chaos, demanding resources, and facing zero consequences. If the deputy director of the CIA sees Langley Falls as a place where normal rules do not apply to him, then the entire agency sees Langley Falls that way. The town exists for CIA convenience. Residents exist as background characters in CIA operations. The most damning evidence is how normalized everything becomes. Residents of Langley Falls experience CIA intrusions constantly, and nobody leaves. Nobody organizes resistance. Nobody contacts federal oversight committees. The population has been conditioned through years of exposure to accept CIA control as normal background reality. That level of conditioning requires systematic, long-term manipulation of the sort that intelligence agencies specialize in. Langley Falls is what happens when the CIA builds a town from scratch as a testing environment and then populates it with agents, assets, and unwitting civilians who can be monitored, experimented on, and controlled without external oversight. It's a petri dish where the bacteria are American citizens who think they live in a normal community, while the CIA observes, tests, manipulates, and records data on how humans respond to various stimuli. And everyone just keeps living there, keeps sending their kids to schools run by corrupt principals, keeps shopping at stores that might be CIA fronts, keeps trusting neighbors who might be Roger in disguise or undercover agents gathering intelligence. The show's comedy comes from how absurd this premise is. The horror comes from how thoroughly the show documents that yes, this is exactly what Langley Falls is, and nobody can escape because the CIA controls everything. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Tearjerker spy films are a parallel canon that bleeds into reality theory. American Dad asks viewers to accept a lot of impossible things as normal. An alien lives in the attic, a goldfish talks, the CIA runs a town like a personal playground. Most episodes exist in what the show treats as main continuity, where events have consequences and characters remember what happened. But then there are the Tearjerker episodes, which the show labels as James Bond parodies existing outside regular canon. Except the evidence suggests these spy films are not separate at all. They exist as a parallel timeline that bleeds into main reality through specific, documentable connections that the show itself establishes. The first Tearjerker episode aired in January 2008 during Season 4. American Dad marketed it as a formula-breaking episode, a standalone James Bond spoof where the regular characters play spy movie versions of themselves. Stan becomes Agent Stan Smith, a skilled secret agent instead of a bumbling CIA bureaucrat. Francine transforms into Sexpun Tecum, a femme fatale working for the villain. Roger plays Tearjerker, an international terrorist who kidnaps celebrities, replaces them with robots, and plans to premiere a movie so sad it kills viewers by making them cry to death. The episode ends with Tearjerker falling into a volcano and apparently dying, with his hand briefly rising from the lava before falling back in. Then 5 years later, in March 2013, the sequel, For Black Eyes Only, aired during season 9. This episode picks up exactly where the first one ended, with Stan and Sexpun on their honeymoon after getting married in the previous episode's finale. A new villain called Black Villain interrupts the honeymoon and shoots Sexpun dead. Stan spends a year working construction in Ireland before returning to hunt down Black Villain with help from Tearjerker, who survived the volcano and now sits imprisoned at a secret facility. The sequel treats the first episode as real backstory, not as a contained parody. Here is the critical detail that breaks the separation between Spy World and main continuity. In season 11, American Dad aired The 200, an episode celebrating the show's 200th episode milestone. The plot reveals that Roger accidentally walked into a Hadron Collider at some point, which created physical clones of all his personas. 200 separate Rogers appear, each representing a different disguise he created over the show's run. These clones attack the Smith family as an army of Roger's alternate identities made flesh. Tearjerker appears among those 200 personas. He shows up on screen as one of the physical beings created by the Hadron Collider accident. This single appearance destroys the idea that Tearjerker exists only in non-canon parody episodes. The show confirms through The 200 that Tearjerker is a real Roger persona that exists within main continuity, equivalent to every other disguise Roger has created. If Tearjerker is real enough to gain physical form through the Hadron Collider, then the events of the Tearjerker episodes cannot be dismissed as separate fiction. The show established rules about how Roger's personas work, and Tearjerker follows all of them. In season 5's The One That Got Away, Roger discovers that one of his personas named Sidney Huffman has developed completely independent existence. Roger created Sidney as a Bible salesman, but Sidney gained his own life, memories, and personality separate from Roger's consciousness. Roger tracks Sidney down and discovers his own persona living autonomously. With relationships and routines Roger himself never actively created. This episode proves Roger's personas can become real independent beings. Tearjerker demonstrates the same independence. In both spy episodes, Tearjerker operates with motivations and infrastructure that go beyond what Roger in his base form would care about. Roger causes chaos for petty reasons in regular episodes. He ruins lives over minor slights and gets bored easily. But Tearjerker runs an international terrorist organization with spa facilities, robot manufacturing, elaborate island layers, and plans requiring years of preparation. This level of commitment suggests Tearjerker exists as his own entity with goals independent from Roger's whims. The show reinforces this pattern with other recurring Roger personas. Ricky Spanish appears across multiple episodes as Roger's most hated identity, a criminal who terrorized Langley Falls for years. The Ricky Spanish persona becomes so powerful that in season 13's persona assistant, simply wearing the costume corrupts Stan and forces him to commit crimes against his will. The persona has independent power that can take over anyone who puts on the disguise. This proves Roger's personas exist as real forces in the world with their own agency. If Sidney Huffman can live independently, if Ricky Spanish can corrupt other people, and if all 200 personas can gain physical form, then Tearjerker must also be real within main continuity. The spy episodes might show an alternate timeline where this particular persona plays out its full story, but the character himself exists as one of Roger's real identities with actual presence in the show's world. The bleeding between timelines shows up in who appears in the spy episodes. Principal Brian Lewis plays Black Villain in For Black Eyes Only, the main antagonist who kills Sexpun and tries to melt the ice caps to turn his Detroit home into beachfront property. This casting choice is not random. In main continuity, Lewis serves as principal of Pearl Bailey High School, but the show has established him as one of the most violent and corrupt characters in the entire series. Lewis has murdered people, run criminal enterprises, threatened students with weapons, and operated completely outside any law or morality. Multiple episodes show him committing felonies without consequences. Having Lewis appear as a supervillain in the spy timeline makes perfect sense because his regular character already behaves like a supervillain. The show is not asking Lewis to play against type. It is showing what Lewis would be if he existed in a world built around spy movie logic instead of sitcom logic. This suggests the spy timeline pulls from the same character pool as main continuity, just filtered through different genre conventions. The people are the same, the relationships parallel each other, only the setting and stakes change. The show drops more evidence through how it handles other alternate reality episodes. American Dad has produced several clear non-canon episodes that exist completely separate from main continuity. Rapture's Delight from Season 5 shows a post-apocalyptic world after the biblical rapture, with Stan fighting alongside Jesus against the Antichrist. The episode ends with Stan and Francine dying together, which obviously never happened in main continuity. Lost in Space from Season 9 sends the family into outer space for a Star Wars parody that has no connection to regular episodes. The 200 itself takes place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland that the show explicitly states never appears again. But the Tearjerker episodes work differently from these clear non-canon stories. They maintain direct continuity between each other, treating the first episode as backstory for the second. Characters remember specific events. Tearjerker references being shot by Black Villain, which happened off-screen between episodes. Sexpun's death motivates Stan's entire revenge mission in the sequel. The episodes build on each other as a continuous narrative rather than resetting. This persistent timeline suggests something more substantial than a one-off parody. The way regular episodes treat spy work provides more bleeding. In main continuity, Stan works for the CIA, but mostly sits at a desk, pushing papers and following bureaucratic procedures. When he goes on actual missions, he usually fails catastrophically or creates disasters worse than the problems he was sent to solve. The show consistently portrays Stan as incompetent at real spy work despite his years of service. But in the Tearjerker episodes, Stan becomes a skilled secret agent who successfully infiltrates villain lairs, survives elaborate death traps, and defeats international terrorists through clever tactics and combat skills. This contrast suggests the spy timeline represents an idealized version of what Stan imagines his job should be. Every CIA agent probably fantasizes about being James Bond instead of filing reports. The Tearjerker world might be a reality where those fantasies actually manifest through Roger's alien abilities, creating a parallel timeline where spy movie rules replace real-world rules. Stan becomes competent because the genre demands competent heroes. Villains build elaborate lairs because that is what spy movie villains do. The bleeding happens when elements from this fantasy world leak back into main reality. Roger's alien biology provides the mechanism for this bleeding. The show has never fully explained Roger's capabilities beyond shapeshifting and creating disguises, but various episodes demonstrate powers that go beyond simple costume changes. Roger can move at superhuman speed, as shown when Jenny Fromdeblock fakes her death in Season 6. He survives being shot, stabbed, and thrown from buildings across multiple episodes. In Season 8's The Unbrave One, Roger reveals he can regenerate from almost any injury. These abilities suggest Roger operates under different physical rules than humans. If Roger can regenerate, move at super speed, and survive lethal damage, what other abilities might he possess? The show hints that Roger's personas create localized reality distortions. In multiple episodes, Roger maintains several different identities simultaneously, each with separate lives, jobs, and relationships. He cannot physically be in all those places at once using normal methods. The show never explains how one alien can hold down multiple full-time jobs, maintain different apartments across town, and sustain complex relationships under different names all at the same time. The implication is that Roger's personas somehow create pocket realities where they can exist independently. The Hadron Collider accident in the 200 proves Roger can create physical copies of his personas. The episode shows this as an accident, but what if it just made visible something that was already happening? What if Roger's personas always existed as semi-independent beings, and the Hadron Collider just gave them enough physical form to manifest separately? This would explain how Roger maintains multiple identities simultaneously. Each persona exists in its own reality bubble, operating semi-autonomously until Roger needs to inhabit it directly. Tearjerker would represent Roger's most elaborate reality bubble. Instead of just creating a single identity with a job and apartment, the Tearjerker persona generated an entire parallel timeline, complete with international espionage, supervillains, elaborate technology, and world-threatening conspiracies. This timeline exists simultaneously with main continuity, but operates under spy movie rules rather than sitcom rules. Both timelines are equally real. Roger just created one of them through his alien abilities, interacting with his most ambitious persona. The bleeding shows up in small details that connect both timelines. In regular episodes, Roger demonstrates knowledge of espionage tactics, weapons systems, and international criminal operations that he should not possess if he just stayed in the attic. His ability to create elaborate schemes, forge documents, and evade CIA detection despite living with an agent suggests experience that goes beyond casual observation. If Roger actually operates as Tearjerker in a parallel timeline, that would explain his comprehensive understanding of spycraft. Stan shows similar bleeding. In certain regular episodes, he displays combat skills and tactical knowledge that seem inconsistent with his usual incompetence. These moments are brief, and the show usually plays them for comedy, but they suggest Stan has access to abilities he cannot quite reach in normal circumstances. If a parallel timeline exists where Stan actually is a competent secret agent, that competence might occasionally bleed through into main continuity when circumstances align correctly. The spy timeline also explains certain impossible elements in regular episodes. How does Langley Falls contain so many elaborate conspiracies, secret facilities, and international incidents? How does the CIA operate so openly without federal oversight? How do Roger's personas maintain such elaborate infrastructure without anyone questioning the logistics? The answer might be that main continuity bleeds from the spy timeline just as much as the spy timeline bleeds from main continuity. The two realities influence each other, creating a hybrid world where spy movie logic occasionally overrides sitcom logic. Evidence for this bleeding appears in how other characters interact with Roger's personas. Throughout the series, citizens of Langley Falls accept Roger's disguises as real people without question. Roger can appear as a doctor, lawyer, teacher, or any other profession, and people treat him as legitimately qualified despite his gray skin and alien features being completely visible. The show established in Season 8's Roger Needs Dick that when Roger becomes too sick to maintain his personas, the entire town descends into chaos because Roger's fake identities perform crucial community functions that people depend on. This creates a situation where Roger's personas are real enough to hold jobs, maintain relationships, and provide essential services that keep society functioning. If personas can be that real, then Tearjerker being real enough to actually be an international terrorist follows the same logic. The spy episodes might show a heightened version of what happens when Roger fully commits to that persona, but the character himself exists as a genuine threat, operating somewhere in American Dad's reality. The franchise treatment of the Tearjerker episodes provides more evidence. The show explicitly calls the second episode Part 2 of the Tearjerker saga, using language that suggests an ongoing storyline rather than a one-off parody. Both episodes end with teases for potential continuations. The first episode shows Tearjerker's hand rising from the lava before falling back. The second episode ends with Tearjerker washing up on a beach with a swordfish through his body, with a "to be continued" caption appearing before an orca drags him back into the ocean, and the caption changes to "scratch that." These endings keep the possibility of more episodes alive, treating the spy world as an ongoing narrative that can be revisited. The show has not produced a third Tearjerker episode as of 2025, but the fact that 2 episodes exist with direct continuity between them sets them apart from other alternate reality episodes. American Dad has done other multi-part stories, but usually within main continuity. Having a 2-part story that supposedly exists outside canon but maintains its own internal continuity suggests the spy timeline has persistent reality that continues even when the show is not actively showing it. Physical evidence of bleeding appears through Roger's possessions. Various regular episodes show Roger owning spy equipment, weapons, and technology that he should not have access to. He produces fake identities, classified documents, and military-grade hardware from his attic, with no explanation of where he obtained them. If Tearjerker actually operates as an international terrorist in a parallel timeline, Roger could be pulling resources from that reality into main continuity. The bleeding works both ways, with objects and knowledge crossing between timelines through Roger's personas. The clearest proof of bleeding comes from the 200 confirming Tearjerker exists in main continuity as a real persona. This single piece of evidence undermines the entire separate parody framing. If Tearjerker is real, then his world must be real in some form. If his world is real, then the events shown in the spy episodes represent actual occurrences in a parallel timeline. And if that parallel timeline can produce a physical Tearjerker who appears in main continuity through the Hadron Collider accident, then both timelines are connected and bleeding into each other constantly. The show never states this directly. Production materials still describe the Tearjerker episodes as James Bond parodies meant to be fun departures from regular continuity. But the show's own internal logic contradicts this official framing. The evidence exists in the episodes themselves. Tearjerker appears as a real persona in the 200. Roger's personas develop independent existence across multiple episodes. The spy episodes maintain continuous storytelling that connects them as an ongoing narrative. Principal Lewis appears as a villain in his natural element. Small details about spycraft and equipment bleed through into regular episodes. All of this points to a conclusion the show implies but never confirms. The Tearjerker episodes are not non-canon parodies. They show events actually happening in a parallel timeline created by Roger's most elaborate persona. This timeline exists simultaneously with main continuity, operating under different genre rules but remaining equally real. And most importantly, the two timelines bleed into each other through Roger's alien biology, creating a situation where the spy world and the regular world influence each other constantly, even though characters in main continuity never directly acknowledge the bleeding. The parallel canon is real, the bleeding is real, and somewhere in American Dad's multiverse, Tearjerker continues operating as an international terrorist while Roger sits in the attic eating potato chips, both versions existing simultaneously, because Roger's alien nature allows him to be in multiple realities at once. The show built this possibility into its own canon through the 200, whether intentionally or accidentally. The evidence is there for anyone who looks closely enough at how Roger's personas actually work. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Jeff's abduction exposes a slave empire run by Roger's species. Jeff Fisher discovered Roger was an alien in Season 8's Naked to the Limit one more time. This created a problem. Stan works for the CIA, an organization actively searching for aliens. If Jeff told anyone about Roger, the entire Smith family would face consequences. Stan had to make a choice, kill Jeff or kill Roger. Before either execution could happen, Roger asked Jeff for a hug goodbye, then tossed him into a tractor beam from a spaceship that appeared overhead. Jeff vanished into space, while Haley watched helplessly from the ground. Roger eliminated the problem by shipping Jeff off to his home planet's fleet. This single action exposed something the show had only hinted at before. Roger belongs to a species that operates massive slave ships, capturing beings from across the galaxy. The evidence appears directly in Season 9's Lost in Space, which follows Jeff's experience aboard one of these vessels for several months after his abduction. What Jeff discovers reveals Roger's species runs an empire built entirely on slavery, trafficking, and systematic oppression of other species. Jeff wakes up hanging from a ceiling in solitary confinement. An alien named Foster enters the cell and explains he heads Emperor Zing's security team. Foster belongs to Roger's species. He has the same gray skin, the same physical build, the same general appearance as Roger. Foster is not alone. The episode establishes that Emperor Zing, Foster, the entire security team, and roughly half the residents of the spaceship all belong to Roger's alien race. They are the slave owners. The other half consists of miscellaneous alien species abducted from their respective home planets and forced to work as slaves. The ship itself functions as a bizarre shopping mall facility. Foster gives Jeff a tour showing stores, food courts, entertainment venues, all staffed by enslaved aliens from different worlds. Emperor Zing runs this operation from the top, maintaining absolute control over thousands of captive beings. Foster assigns Jeff to work at a shawarma food stand, where Jeff meets Sinbad, the only other human on the ship. Sinbad was abducted 2 months before Jeff arrived. This confirms Roger's species regularly abducts humans along with other alien races for their slave operations. The The scale of this enterprise becomes clear through what the episode shows. This is not a small, illegal operation run by rogue criminals. Emperor Xing holds the title of Emperor, indicating formal governmental authority. He commands security forces, maintains infrastructure across a massive vessel, and operates multiple commercial facilities requiring extensive staffing. The ship represents just one vessel in what must be a much larger fleet, since Roger called this specific ship to pick him up when he needed to dispose of Jeff. If Roger can summon a slave ship on demand, his species must operate numerous vessels conducting regular abductions across the galaxy. The slavery system includes specific rules and punishments designed to maintain control. Jeff learns that Emperor Xing allows captives only one chance at freedom: prove they are truly in love with someone. This presents an impossible standard for most prisoners. How does someone prove love under these circumstances? The test itself involves a creature called the Majestic, a monster alien that can read memories and display them on screens for Emperor Xing and the slave-owning aliens to judge. If the prisoner fails to prove their love, they face castration. Their genitals get removed and stored in fish bowls as trophies. This punishment serves multiple purposes. It physically mutilates prisoners, making escape and survival more difficult. It destroys their ability to reproduce, preventing any possibility of captive populations growing independently. It creates psychological trauma that breaks resistance, and it provides entertainment for the slave-owning class, who watch these tests as public spectacles. The episode shows crowds of Roger's species gathering to watch Jeff's test, treating the proceedings like theater or sports. When Jeff takes the test, the Majestic displays his memories with Haley on multiple screens, but the creature only shows negative memories where Jeff acted like a jerk to his wife. Emperor Xing declares Jeff failed the test. Jeff protests that he genuinely loves Haley, but Xing ignores him and schedules him for castration the next day. Later, Jeff confronts the Majestic in its pit and demands to know why it only showed bad memories. The creature reveals that Emperor Xing commanded it to show only negative memories. The test was rigged from the start. Xing never intended to let anyone go free. The love test exists solely as psychological torture and entertainment for the slave-owning population. The Majestic also reveals why Xing created this system. The Emperor once had a romantic relationship with Roger before Roger came to Earth. Roger cheated on Xing with a human male, breaking his heart. Rather than processing this rejection like a functional person, Xing decided to wage war on love itself. He built an empire around denying love to everyone else, using enslaved populations as pawns in his personal vendetta against romantic attachment. The spaceship resembles a shopping mall because Xing initially tried to cope with heartbreak through compulsive shopping. When retail therapy failed to fill the emotional void, he escalated to enslaving other species and systematically destroying their relationships. This backstory confirms several disturbing facts about Roger's species. First, they possess the technology and resources to build and maintain massive slave ships disguised as commercial facilities. Second, their government operates under an imperial system with an emperor holding absolute authority. Third, that emperor can implement galaxy-wide slavery policies based on personal emotional problems without anyone stopping him. Fourth, the rest of Roger's species willingly participates in this slavery system, staffing security forces, operating facilities, and enjoying entertainment derived from prisoner torture. The episode shows other members of Roger's species throughout the ship. They all work in positions of authority over enslaved populations. They all participate in maintaining the system. None of them question the morality of abducting innocent beings and forcing them into labor. The show presents Roger's species as uniformly complicit in operating this slave empire. They are not good people with a few bad leaders. They are a civilization built on trafficking and exploitation. Jeff starts a slave rebellion by exposing Emperor Xing's lies about love being impossible. He gets the Majestic to show the Emperor's own memories of his relationship with Roger, proving to all the enslaved populations that Xing lied to them about love not existing. The other slaves, enraged at being deceived, riot against their captors. The rebellion creates enough chaos for Jeff and Sinbad to reach an escape pod. Security forces from Roger's species chase them, and Sinbad sacrifices his life fighting off the guards so Jeff can escape. The comedian dies from a guard slashing through his chest, but his ghost returns in the post-credits scene to help Jeff navigate home. Jeff escapes, but faces a new problem. The universe contains over 47,000 planets named Earth. Finding his specific Earth will take years or decades of searching through different worlds. This detail expands the horror of Roger's species' slave operation. They capture beings from so many different planets that Earth alone has 47,000 variants across the galaxy. The scope of their trafficking operation spans countless solar systems and civilizations. Jeff represents just one human from one Earth, and thousands of other versions of his planet exist with their own populations vulnerable to abduction. The show never addresses what happens after Jeff's rebellion. Does Emperor Zing maintain control? Do the slaves successfully overthrow their captors? Does the rebellion spread to other slave ships in the fleet? American Dad never answers these questions. The episode ends with Jeff lost in space searching for home, while Roger's species' empire presumably continues operating across the galaxy. Roger's personal history connects directly to this system. The show establishes that Roger came to Earth in 1947 during the Roswell incident. Multiple episodes reveal he was tricked into coming here, led to believe he was the decider who would determine if Earth deserved to be saved or destroyed. In Whiner of Our Discontent, Roger discovers a note in his crashed spaceship revealing the ship was just a test model and he was essentially a crash test dummy. His own species abandoned him on Earth as a disposable test subject. This abandonment makes sense within the context of a slavery-based civilization. Roger's species treats other beings as disposable resources. Why would they treat their own people any better? Roger was deemed expendable, stuffed into an experimental spacecraft, and sent to a random planet with no support or extraction plan. He only survived through luck and by eventually forming a relationship with the Smith family. His entire existence on Earth results from his species' casual cruelty toward their own population. Roger mentions in various episodes that he worked as a greeter at a retail store on his home planet. This detail connects to the shopping mall aesthetic of Emperor Zing's slave ship. Roger's civilization apparently operates consumer-based economies with retail positions at the bottom of their social hierarchy. Roger held one of these low-status jobs before being discarded to Earth. His position as a retail greeter suggests his species maintains strict class divisions, with individuals like Roger occupying the lower tiers, while emperors like Zing command slave fleets from the top. The show also establishes in Franny 911 that Roger's species has a biological requirement to express negativity. If they do not regularly get their bitchiness out, it transforms into poison that kills them. This biological trait creates a species psychologically hardwired for cruelty. They must hurt others to survive. A civilization composed of beings who die if they are too nice would naturally develop systems that facilitate constant cruelty. Slavery provides the perfect outlet for this biological imperative. Roger's species can satisfy their need for malice by tormenting enslaved populations, turning their deadly psychological requirements into an economic and social structure. Roger himself demonstrates this cruelty constantly throughout the series. He manipulates, deceives, robs, and ruins lives for minor reasons. In Why Can't We Be Friends, he brutally attacks and robs Jeff 4 times. In Virtual Insanity, he kills 5 people over $20 and causes a plane to explode. The show presents Roger as one of the most consistently evil characters in the entire series, committing crimes ranging from theft to murder to sexual assault without remorse. His behavior reflects the baseline morality of his entire species. If Roger represents a normal member of his civilization, then an entire population of Rogers would create exactly the kind of society Lost in Space depicts. Thousands of beings with Roger's casual cruelty, manipulative tendencies, and complete disregard for other people's well-being would inevitably build an empire based on exploitation. The slave ships are not aberrations. They are the logical conclusion of Roger's species' biology and psychology applied at a civilizational scale. The show confirms Roger can summon these slave ships whenever he wants. In Naked to the Limit, One More Time, he calls a ship to pick him up, suggesting he has maintained contact with his species' fleet throughout his time on Earth. This means Roger knows about the slave operations. He understands what happens to beings who get abducted by his people's ships. And he deliberately threw Jeff into that system, knowing full well the torture and slavery Jeff would face. Roger condemned Jeff to months or years of captivity on a slave ship because keeping Jeff quiet was more convenient than having an honest conversation. This action represents one of Roger's most evil decisions across the entire series. He sentenced an innocent person to slavery in an empire he knows intimately. Fully aware of the torture and abuse Jeff would suffer, the show frames this as Roger crossing a moral event horizon from which he cannot return. Fans noted this episode as the point where Roger became irredeemably villainous. His species' slave empire makes this betrayal even worse because Roger knew exactly what he was condemning Jeff to experience. The subsequent episode, Holy Shit, Jeff's Back from Season 10, adds another layer to Roger's species' operations. When a being claiming to be Jeff returns to Earth, it turns out to be an alien from a different species called Zeblier, who specializes in collecting samples from other worlds. His race dissects specimens to study them. They killed the real Jeff during their examination. This reveals that multiple alien species operate abduction programs targeting Earth and other planets. Roger's species runs slave ships. Zeblier's species runs specimen collection operations. Earth sits in a region of space where multiple advanced civilizations regularly kidnap inhabitants for various purposes. The episode shows Zeblier's species maintains sophisticated cloning technology. They can create perfect copies of dissected specimens and even transplant brains between bodies. This technology suggests widespread trafficking and experimentation on kidnapped populations across the galaxy. Roger's species enslaves. Zeblier's species dissects and studies. How many other species operate their own exploitation systems? The show implies Earth and countless other worlds exist as hunting grounds for multiple advanced civilizations with no apparent regulation or consequences for their actions. Roger lives on Earth aware of all this. He knows multiple species target this planet for abduction. He knows his own people run slave operations. He knows beings like Jeff can disappear into these systems and spend years suffering before escaping or dying. And he continues living with the Smith family, causing chaos for his own amusement while maintaining the option to call slave ships if he needs them. His entire presence on Earth represents a security threat because he maintains connections to an empire built on trafficking and exploitation. The show never addresses the larger implications of Lost in Space. No government agency investigates the slave empire. No galactic authority intervenes to stop the trafficking. The CIA never learns about the fleet of ships operated by Roger's species. Stan never discovers that his houseguest belongs to a civilization running one of the most evil operations imaginable. The slave empire continues existing off-screen while Roger stays in the attic, drinking wine and creating personas. Jeff's abduction exposed a truth American Dad usually keeps hidden. Roger does not come from a quirky alien civilization with funny customs. He comes from an empire that captures, enslaves, tortures, and mutilates beings from across the galaxy for profit and entertainment. His species is not misunderstood or morally gray. They are slavers operating on a massive scale. And Roger participates in this system when convenient, summoning slave ships to dispose of problems and throwing innocent people into a nightmare he knows intimately. The show presented this information clearly in Lost in Space through direct evidence. Emperor Zing runs the ship. Roger's species staffs the operation. Thousands of enslaved beings suffer in their captivity. Jeff witnessed it firsthand and barely escaped with his life. The slave empire is not theory or speculation. It is established canon, presented explicitly in the episode. Roger's species operates a galaxy-spanning slavery operation, and the show confirmed this fact through one of its most celebrated episodes. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Klaus's voice is unreliable, maybe even a projection used to control him. Klaus Heisler presents himself as a former East German Olympic ski jumper whose brain was transferred into a goldfish body by the CIA in 1986. He lives in a fishbowl in the Smith household, complaining constantly about his situation while speaking with a German accent. The show treats his voice as natural, the result of a human brain inhabiting a fish body, but the evidence suggests something more disturbing. Klaus's voice may not be his own at all. It might be a projection created and controlled by external forces, keeping him compliant and contained while hiding what he has truly become. The fundamental problem starts with basic biology. Goldfish do not have vocal cords. They cannot produce sound in the way mammals do. Klaus possesses a human brain, but that brain sits inside a goldfish body with goldfish anatomy. The show establishes this clearly when describing the brain transfer process. The CIA switched Klaus's brainwaves with those of a goldfish during the 1986 Winter Olympics. His human body, now carrying a goldfish brain, instinctually headed for a nearby stream and eventually died from exposure or drowning. Klaus's human brain went into the goldfish, giving it human consciousness but not human biology. A goldfish body has no larynx, no vocal cords, no tongue capable of forming words, no lips to shape sounds. Even with a human brain sending signals, the physical apparatus for speech does not exist. Klaus should be as mute as any other fish. He might think in German, might have human thoughts and memories, but he should have no physical way to express them audibly. Yet Klaus speaks constantly throughout the series, carrying on full conversations with a German accent and perfect clarity. The show never explains how this works. No episode addresses the biological impossibility of a goldfish producing human speech. Characters treat Klaus's voice as normal without questioning the mechanics. This absence of explanation becomes more suspicious when considering who performed the brain transfer. The CIA, an organization American Dad repeatedly shows, possesses advanced technology far beyond what they reveal to the public. The show establishes across multiple episodes that the CIA has mastered brain manipulation technology. They transferred Klaus's consciousness into a fish. They transferred Klaus into a black man's body in finances with wolves. They created consciousness transfer machines capable of switching minds between any two bodies. They developed technology to erase memories, implant false memories, and alter personality. The CIA operates at a technological level that makes human-fish brain transfers routine procedures. If the CIA can transfer consciousness between bodies, they can create other consciousness-related technology, telepathic communication devices, neural interfaces, voice projection systems that read thoughts and convert them into audible speech. The technology to make a mute goldfish appear to talk would be trivial for an organization that routinely performs consciousness transfers. Evidence for external voice projection appears in Merlot Down Dirty Shame. This episode establishes that Klaus can communicate telepathically with Haley. They share thoughts without speaking aloud. The show presents this as a special connection between Klaus and Haley, but it proves Klaus possesses some form of telepathic capability. If he can send thoughts directly to Haley's mind, what stops the CIA from receiving those thoughts and broadcasting them as audible speech through external equipment? The episode never explains how this telepathy works or why Klaus only shares it with Haley. The show drops this detail casually and never addresses it again in later episodes. This inconsistency suggests the telepathy is not a natural ability Klaus developed. It might be evidence of the true mechanism behind Klaus's voice. Perhaps what everyone hears as Klaus talking is actually a CIA device reading his thoughts and projecting them as sound. Haley might be sensitive enough to receive Klaus's actual telepathic broadcasts directly, bypassing the voice projection system. This would explain why Klaus's voice remains perfectly consistent despite his biology. The projection system reads his thoughts and converts them to speech, maintaining the same accent and vocal patterns regardless of physical constraints. Klaus thinks in German with his original voice. The system reproduces those thoughts as audible sound. Everyone hears Klaus speaking, but he is not actually producing the sounds. He is thinking, and the CIA technology is broadcasting those thoughts. The question becomes, why would the CIA bother? If they have Klaus's consciousness trapped in a goldfish, why spend resources projecting his voice? The answer lies in control. A mute fish with human intelligence would be useless for intelligence gathering. It could not communicate information, could not be interrogated, could not serve any purpose beyond torture. But a fish that can talk becomes a tool. The CIA can question it, extract information, use it for psychological experiments, or place it in households as a monitoring device. Stan Smith serves as a high-level CIA officer. The agency ordered him to keep Klaus as the family pet. The show establishes this fact in multiple episodes. Stan did not choose to adopt Klaus. He was assigned to house the fish. The CIA wanted Klaus in the Smith household specifically, under Stan's supervision. This placement makes no sense if Klaus is just a failed ski jumper trapped in punishment, but it makes perfect sense if Klaus serves as a monitoring device. The voice projection system does more than let Klaus communicate. It gives the CIA direct access to everything Klaus observes. If the system reads Klaus's thoughts to project speech, it also records those thoughts. Klaus sits in the Smith house, witnessing every conversation, every family secret, every classified document Stan brings home. A mute fish could observe but never report. A fish with CIA-provided voice projection becomes a permanent surveillance system, broadcasting directly to agency servers. Klaus's behavior supports this theory. He regularly breaks the fourth wall, commenting on his own lack of activity in episodes or making metatextual observations about the show itself. In Big Trouble in Little Langley, Francine forgets to mention Klaus when checking if everyone is safe, leaving him frustrated. Klaus frequently points out that he gets minimal screen time, minimal plot involvement, and exists mostly as background presence. These fourth wall breaks might not be comedy. They might be Klaus's awareness that something is wrong with his existence. If Klaus's voice is a projection system controlled by the CIA, his consciousness might recognize the manipulation even if he cannot articulate it directly. His complaints about being forgotten or ignored could be attempts to signal that he is not what he appears. The fourth wall breaks might represent moments where the real Klaus surfaces, trying to communicate that his entire existence is performance controlled by external forces. The telepathy with Haley could be Klaus's genuine consciousness breaking through the voice projection to make direct contact. Haley might be the only person sensitive enough to receive his actual thoughts rather than the CIA broadcast voice. Their friendship, shown across multiple episodes, might represent Klaus's only authentic connection with another being. With everyone else, he interacts through the projection system. With Haley, he achieves brief moments of genuine communication. Klaus's physical abilities point to further manipulation. The show establishes that ordinary goldfish die immediately if placed in liquids other than water or exposed to extreme temperatures. Klaus survives in coffee, vodka, jello, frozen conditions, washing machines, and other environments that should instantly kill a goldfish. His consciousness somehow grants his fish body enhanced durability that defies biological reality. This durability suggests the goldfish body itself has been modified beyond just receiving a human brain. The CIA might have augmented Klaus's biology to survive harsh conditions, creating a more resilient surveillance platform. If they modified his body for survival, they certainly installed technology for communication. The voice projection system might be one component of a larger package of modifications designed to make Klaus useful for intelligence gathering. The show reveals Klaus's physical size is inconsistent with reality. In Bar Mitzvah Hustle, a behind-the-scenes shot shows Klaus and his fishbowl in front of a green screen. Both Klaus and the dish appear huge, implying Klaus is actually large and digitally inserted into scenes. The DVD commentary mentions this scene was written for voice actor D. Bradley Baker to emerge from a fish costume, suggesting Klaus is not actually a small goldfish at all. If Klaus is not actually fish-sized, what is he? This green screen reveal might be evidence that Klaus's appearance is entirely fabricated. Perhaps the real Klaus is not a goldfish at all. The CIA might keep his brain in a containment unit somewhere while projecting a goldfish avatar into the Smith household. Everything the family sees and hears from Klaus could be artificial, a constructed interface designed to hide whatever Klaus has actually become. This would explain how Klaus can exist decades after his transfer, despite goldfish living only a few years. American Dad takes place decades after the 1986 Olympics. A normal goldfish would have died multiple times over. The show acknowledges this impossibility in Of Ice and Men, where Klaus claims he previously inhabited 2 sharks and a monkey. If Klaus has jumped between multiple animal bodies, it proves his consciousness is not permanently fixed in any one organism. The CIA might move his mind between bodies as needed, using whatever vessel suits their current purposes. The episode set in 2045 shows Klaus with a human body and a grandson. He tells his grandson stories about the Smith family, mentioning he was once in a goldfish, but providing no explanation for how he regained human form. Klaus also claims to have been in shark and monkey bodies, but speaks sarcastically, leaving truth ambiguous. This future timeline proves Klaus eventually escapes the goldfish situation, but the method remains unexplained. If Klaus's voice is a projection system, his eventual escape might involve breaking free from CIA control rather than physically changing bodies. The real Klaus could exist in some other form entirely, with the goldfish avatar serving as his interface. His future human body might not be a body at all, but rather Klaus finally gaining enough freedom to project a human avatar instead of a fish avatar. The grandson might be fabricated. Part of the story, Klaus tells himself to maintain sanity while trapped in CIA custody. Stan promised in Da Flippity Flop that he would help Klaus become human again, then immediately admitted he probably would not follow through. This broken promise is presented as typical Stan laziness, but it might reveal that Stan knows Klaus cannot become human again because Klaus is not actually in a goldfish. Stan works for the CIA. He knows what they did to Klaus. His refusal to help might be Stan understanding that Klaus's situation is permanent. Maintained by technology, Stan cannot override or disable. The voice projection theory also explains Klaus's inconsistent characterization. Early seasons portrayed him as aggressively pursuing Francine sexually, scheming to steal her from Stan. Later seasons dropped this behavior entirely. The showrunner explained this shift as matching Klaus's personality closer to voice actor D. Bradley Baker's performance. But if Klaus's voice is an external projection, personality shifts make sense as the CIA adjusting the projection parameters. They might modify Klaus's behavior patterns remotely, changing how his thoughts get filtered into speech. Klaus's awareness of his manipulation shows in how he interacts with Roger. Among all the Smith household residents, Klaus most clearly recognizes Roger's cruel and vindictive nature. Klaus constantly warns the family against trusting Roger, but everyone ignores these warnings. Klaus sees through Roger's personas and schemes more consistently than other characters. This awareness might come from Klaus recognizing manipulation when he sees it, having spent decades as a manipulated entity himself. The German accent itself could be fabrication. D. Bradley Baker auditioned for Klaus using a German accent when the character was originally conceived as French. The producers cast Baker and changed Klaus to German based on his audition performance. If Klaus's voice is a projection, the CIA might have chosen the German accent specifically. It makes Klaus seem foreign, other, less trustworthy in American households. It ensures he remains an outsider even while living with the family. The accent serves as a constant reminder that Klaus does not belong, making it easier to dismiss or ignore him. Klaus's dark behavior, attributed to being German, might actually be Klaus pushing against the projection system's constraints. When he does cruel things to Roger or schemes for revenge, he might be attempting to break the behavioral programming the CIA installed. His moments of genuine friendship with Haley could represent the times when his real personality surfaces through the projection. The CIA's motivation for this elaborate control system becomes clear when considering what Klaus represents. He is proof that consciousness can be transferred between bodies. He demonstrates that human minds can survive in non-human vessels. This technology has massive implications for intelligence work. Agents could transfer into animal bodies for surveillance. Dying agents could be preserved by moving their consciousness into new vessels. Enemy prisoners could be trapped in helpless forms for eternal interrogation. Klaus serves as a test case and proof of concept. The CIA keeps him in the Smith household to study long-term effects of consciousness transfer. They monitor his mental stability, track his adaptation to fish biology, and refine the voice projection system based on decades of real-world data. Stan's assignment to House Klaus is not kindness. It is a long-term research project, with Klaus as the unwilling test subject. The voice Klaus hears might not match the voice others hear. When Klaus thinks he is speaking naturally, the projection system might be filtering his thoughts, removing certain topics or alterations his intended words. Klaus could be screaming for help constantly while the projection system broadcasts pleasant conversation. The telepathy with Haley might be the only time his genuine thoughts reach another person unfiltered. Every time Klaus breaks the fourth wall, he might be attempting to communicate the truth. When he comments on lack of screen time or plot relevance, he might be trying to tell viewers that he barely exists at all, that most of what appears as Klaus is fabrication. The metatextual awareness could be Klaus's consciousness, recognizing it exists in a constructed reality, controlled and monitored by forces beyond his understanding. The show presents Klaus as comic relief, a talking fish with a German accent making sarcastic observations from his fishbowl. But the evidence suggests something far darker. Klaus is a prisoner whose voice may not be his own, whose thoughts may be monitored and broadcast by technology he cannot control, whose very existence serves the CIA's research into consciousness transfer and surveillance. The goldfish body might be real or might be avatar. The voice might be his or might be projection. But Klaus himself remains trapped. Whether in a fish or in a containment unit somewhere, his consciousness exploited and his true fate hidden behind the simple image of a talking goldfish in a bowl. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Rogu proves Roger reproduces by budding, a quiet extinction level risk theory. Rogu first appeared in Season 13's Persona Assistant as what everyone assumed was a tumor growing on Roger's head. The Smith family noticed a large bump and convinced Roger to have it removed. Doctors extracted what they believed was a benign growth. Then the tumor opened its eyes, spoke, and started moving independently. The medical extraction was not surgery, it was birth. Roger had reproduced asexually through budding, creating a fully functional offspring without mating, pregnancy, or any warning that this was even possible. The show presents Rogu as comedic, a small alien homunculus with Roger's abilities but a childlike personality. Episodes feature Rogu causing chaos, multiplying when fed candy, transforming into giant monsters when given oysters, and generally acting as Roger's miniature sidekick. The humor distracts from the terrifying biological reality. Roger created a sentient duplicate of himself through unconscious cellular processes. His body grew a second brain, a complete nervous system, and functional organs inside what appeared to be a tumor. When removed, this growth became an independent being capable of all Roger's powers, including shape-shifting, persona creation, and apparent immortality. Roger explains in Persona Assistant that his species developed homunculi as stand-in doubles when feeling overworked. His body realized he was being overtaxed by maintaining too many personas simultaneously, so it automatically created Rogu to share the workload. Stan asks if this is something Roger's race normally does. Roger shrugs and says, apparently. This single word reveals the horror. Roger did not know his species could reproduce through stress-induced budding until it happened to him. He has lived on Earth for over 60 years without this occurring. The mechanism triggered for the first time in his life because he reached a critical stress threshold that activated dormant reproductive biology. This means every member of Roger's species carries the potential to spontaneously create offspring whenever they experience sufficient stress. They do not need mates. They do not need permission. They do not need resources or planning or conscious intent. Their bodies automatically bud new organisms when external pressures reach certain levels, and stress is subjective, variable, and impossible to predict. What triggers budding in one individual might not trigger it in another. Roger budded because managing too many personas created psychological stress. A different member of his species might bud from hunger, loneliness, fear, anger, or any other negative stimulus. The show establishes in The Hand that rocks the Rogu that Rogu can multiply. When given candy, he splits into multiple copies of himself. One Rogu becomes 2, then 4, then dozens. The copies merge back into single large Rogu or remain separate smaller Rogus depending on external stimuli. Feeding Rogu makes him reproduce. Showing him videos makes the copies merge. Feeding him oysters transforms him into a giant, Cthulhu-like demon that flies away. His biology responds to environmental inputs by changing size, number, and form rapidly and unpredictably. If Rogu inherited this multiplication ability from Roger, then Roger possesses it too. The show has not depicted Roger multiplying yet, but the biological capacity exists in his species. Any Roger can potentially become multiple Rogers under the right conditions. And since each Roger can bud Rogus under stress, and each Rogu can multiply when fed certain foods, the reproductive potential becomes exponential. One stressed Roger creates one Rogu. That Rogu eats candy and becomes 10 Rogus. Each of those grows to Roger's size and buds their own offspring under stress. Within a few cycles, you have hundreds of Rogers and Rogus operating independently. The show confirms in Stan and Francine and Stan and Francine and Radhika that Roger breastfeeds his offspring. Francine mentions to past Stan that Rogu is Roger's offspring and notes that Roger breastfeeds them. This confirms Roger treats reproduction as a normal parental process for his species. He created Rogu, takes responsibility for him, feeds him through lactation, and accepts him as his son. The biological machinery for producing and nurturing offspring through budding is standard equipment for Roger's species. It is not an aberration or mutation. It is how they reproduce. This creates an immediate extinction-level threat that nobody in the show acknowledges. Roger lives on Earth as one of the most unstable, stressed, and psychologically volatile beings ever depicted in fiction. He experiences constant emotional turbulence from maintaining hundreds of personas, dealing with rejection and boredom, and living as an alien trapped among humans. His species requires expressing cruelty to survive, meaning Roger operates in a permanent state of agitation. He should be budding offspring constantly given his stress levels. The fact that Rogu only appeared in season 13 after Roger lived on Earth since 1947 suggests Roger recently crossed a threshold he had never reached before. For 70 years, Roger managed stress without triggering reproduction. Then something changed. His persona load increased, his integration with human society deepened, his psychological complexity expanded until his body decided it could not handle everything alone and created Rogu to help. If this happened once, it can happen again. Every time Roger feels overwhelmed, his body might create another Rogu. And every time those Rogus feel stressed, they might create their own offspring. The multiplication potential does not stop with intentional feeding. The hand that rocks the Rogu shows that simple candy triggers reproduction. Candy is everywhere. Rogu lives in a human household filled with sugar. He attends parties, rides in cars, exists in environments saturated with substances that make him multiply. The episode treats this as a babysitting emergency that gets resolved when Steve learns to follow instructions. But it proves Rogu constantly exists one meal away from exponential reproduction. If he eats the wrong food, he splits into dozens of copies. If those copies eat more candy, they split again. Nothing stops the process except careful monitoring of his diet. Roger's species engineered this reproduction method deliberately. The show states, homunculi exist, so overworked members of Roger's species can create stand-in doubles. This is not accidental biology. Roger's ancestors designed budding as a solution to workload management. An advanced civilization capable of creating slave empires and operating galaxy-wide trafficking networks deliberately built exponential reproduction into their species as a stress response. They looked at their society, recognized they would face overwhelming work demands, and decided the solution was spontaneous asexual reproduction triggered by pressure. This design choice makes sense for a species running an empire. They need massive populations to staff slave ships, operate facilities, and maintain control across countless planets. Traditional sexual reproduction takes time, requires partner selection, and produces offspring slowly. Budding creates instant workers when demand exceeds supply. Every stressed slave ship captain can bud a replacement crew member. Every overwhelmed facility manager can create assistants. The species treats reproduction as on-demand labor generation, rather than creating next generations through family structures. But this design becomes catastrophic when applied to a species that experiences chronic stress. Roger's people must be cruel to survive. They operate in permanent psychological agitation. They staff operations requiring constant vigilance and management. If every stressed member starts budding offspring, population growth would be uncontrollable. 1,000 stressed aliens become 2,000. Those 2,000 face even more stress managing doubled populations, so they bud again. 4,000 becomes 8,000, becomes 16,000 in rapid succession. The exponential curve points toward infinity. The show hints this might already be happening. Lost in Space shows Emperor Zing commanding a massive slave ship staffed by thousands of members of Roger's species. Where did they all come from? If the species reproduces sexually, maintaining those population numbers requires massive breeding programs. But if they reproduce through budding whenever stressed, running a slave operation automatically generates the workforce needed to maintain it. Stressed managers, bud assistants, those assistants face stress and bud replacements. The operation grows organically through the same stress that drives it. Roger mentions having a nephew, implying he has siblings, but the show never explains if those siblings were born through budding or some other method. Roger ate his father at age 15, according to I Am the Walrus, suggesting some form of family structure exists. But if Roger's father was himself budded from Roger's grandfather under stress, and Roger budded Rogu, then the entire species might exist as nested layers of stress-induced clones, propagating exponentially. The scariest part is Roger's biology works faster than human perception. The show depicts Rogu's creation as happening over days or weeks as the tumor grew. But from decision to birth, the process was quick. Roger's body detected stress, initiated budding, grew a complete organism with brain and consciousness, and produced a functional offspring in less time than human pregnancy. And Rogu's multiplication through candy happens in minutes. One Rogu eats sweets and instantly splits into multiples. If Roger's species can reproduce this rapidly, an invasion would be over before humanity realized it started. Roger could end human civilization accidentally. If he experiences a trauma severe enough to trigger mass budding, he might produce dozens or hundreds of offspring simultaneously. Each offspring inherits his shape-shifting abilities and sociopathic personality. Each can integrate into human society through disguises. Each can establish personas and build infrastructure. Each will experience stress and bud their own offspring. Within months, thousands of Rogers would be operating across Earth, undetectable because they appear human, unstoppable because they reproduce faster than they can be identified. The show treats Rogu as a single entity Roger manages carefully, but the episode The Sickness reveals keeping Rogu healthy requires treating him like a tumor. When Rogu gets sick, the family has to make Roger sick to heal him. They microwave Roger and make him inhale pollution because Rogu is fundamentally connected to Roger's biology. He is not separate offspring. He is an extension of Roger that happens to operate independently. This means Rogu cannot survive if Roger dies, but it also means Roger's biological state determines Rogu's biological state. If Roger catches a disease, Rogu catches it too. If Roger evolves, Rogu evolves. They are one organism operating in two bodies. This connected biology creates a terrifying scenario. If Rogu can multiply into dozens of copies and all those copies remain biologically linked to Roger, then Roger effectively achieves distributed existence. He becomes a hive mind operating through multiple bodies. Each Rogu thinks independently but shares core biology with the original. Kill one Rogu and the others survive. Kill Roger and all the Rogus might die. Or they might survive as independent entities with Roger's memories and abilities. The show has not tested what happens if Roger dies while Rogu lives. The oyster transformation proves Rogu's biology is unstable and unpredictable. Feeding him one type of food makes him multiply. Feeding him a different food transforms him into a giant demon. His body responds to dietary inputs with radical metamorphosis. This suggests Roger's species uses food as biological programming. Different substances trigger different evolutionary responses. Candy equals reproduction. Oysters equal gigantism and mutation. What other foods trigger what other changes? If Roger eats the right meal, does he transform into something worse than he already is? The species biology evolved for rapid adaptation and proliferation. They bud under stress, multiply through feeding, transform through diet, and survive conditions that would kill other organisms. These are traits of an invasive species designed to colonize hostile environments. Roger's ancestors did not evolve on a comfortable planet with stable conditions. They evolved in environments where rapid reproduction and transformation meant survival. Their biology treats every challenge as an opportunity to adapt, multiply, or metamorphose into something more suited to current conditions. Earth presents exactly the kind of environment that would trigger these adaptive responses. Roger experiences constant stress from hiding his alien nature. He faces rejection from his own species, who abandoned him here. He lives among beings he cannot naturally communicate with or mate with. Every day presents challenges his biology interprets as threats, requiring adaptive responses. He has already budded once. How many more times will stress trigger reproduction before he realizes what is happening? The quiet part of extinction level risk is the word quiet. Invasive species do not announce themselves. They establish small populations, adapt to local conditions, and suddenly reach critical mass where they overwhelm native species before anyone notices the threat. Roger has lived on Earth for over 70 years, appearing as a single organism. Humans treat him as unique, the only member of his species on the planet. Then Rogu appears and suddenly there are two. How long before there are 10? Before there are 100? Before every household has a Roger or Rogu living in it, shaped like humans, invisible among the population? American Dad plays Roger and Rogu for laughs. They cause chaos, create personas, and serve as vehicles for comedy. But the show documented something genuinely terrifying. Roger's species reproduces through stress-triggered budding, multiplies through dietary responses, and transforms through environmental stimuli. They are designed to propagate exponentially in hostile conditions. One Roger created one Rogu under stress. That Rogu multiplied into dozens when fed candy. Each of those dozens could grow and bud their own offspring. The math points toward a population explosion that would make Roger's species the dominant life form on Earth within a generation. Nobody in the show treats this as dangerous. Stan accepts Rogu as part of the household. Francine babysits him. Steve plays with him. They treat exponential alien reproduction as a quirky family development, but the evidence is clear. Rogu proves Roger can reproduce without mating. The hand that rocks the Rogu proves the offspring can multiply without limits. The sickness proves they share connected biology that makes them difficult to kill individually. And Roger's personality proves any offspring will inherit his sociopathic tendencies and lack of concern for human life. The extinction level risk is not that Roger will intentionally destroy humanity. It is that his species' reproductive biology makes destruction inevitable. He cannot help budding under stress. The offspring cannot help multiplying when fed. The multiplication cannot help accelerating once started. It is biological programming running according to design. Roger's ancestors created a species that reproduces exponentially in response to pressure. They introduced that species to Earth through Roger, and now Rogu exists as proof the mechanism works exactly as designed. The invasion already began. It just looks like a goldfish in a bowl and a talking alien in an attic. Nobody notices the threat because it appears contained. One becomes two, two becomes dozens, dozens become thousands. By the time anyone realizes what is happening, the Rogers will outnumber humans, invisible among the population, reproducing faster than they can be tracked. And it will all have started with a tumor nobody took seriously because it seemed funny. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that multiple apocalypses mean the Smiths live on a resetting timeline. The Smith family has experienced multiple complete apocalypses that destroyed civilization and killed most of humanity. They have lived through the biblical rapture, followed by 7 years of warfare between Jesus and the Antichrist. They have survived a Hadron Collider explosion that created an electromagnetic pulse, destroying all technology worldwide. Both apocalypses reduced Earth to post-apocalyptic wastelands. Both killed the vast majority of humans. Both fundamentally altered reality. Yet, in subsequent episodes, the family sits in their intact house in suburban Langley Falls, alive and well, with no memory of these cataclysmic events. The show treats these apocalypses as non-canon, alternate timelines that do not impact main continuity. But the evidence suggests something more disturbing. The Smiths live on a resetting timeline that regularly experiences apocalypses, destroys itself, then rewinds to a previous safe state. The first major apocalypse occurs in Season 6's Rapture's Delight. The Smith family goes to church on Christmas morning. Stan and Francine sneak away to have sex in a closet. When they return to the main room, everyone has vanished except their clothes. The rapture occurred while they were gone. Steve and Haley ascended to heaven along with most of the congregation. Stan and Francine were left behind. The episode jumps forward 7 years. The second coming happened. Jesus Christ returned to Earth. The Antichrist rose to power and conquered the planet. War between heaven and hell destroyed civilization. The world transformed into a burning wasteland populated by savage bikers, militiamen, and prostitutes. Humanity teetered on the brink of extinction. Stan became a bitter, scarred warrior fighting for Jesus. Francine became Jesus' girlfriend after Stan abandoned her immediately following the rapture. The episode shows cities in flames, red skies, demons flying overhead, and the moon split in half. This is not localized destruction. The apocalypse was global. Stan fights through Denver, which exists as a war-torn ruin. Jesus travels by motorcycle because all advanced technology failed. Roger stays on Earth because his spaceship broke. The entire planet suffered complete societal collapse. The episode ends with Stan dying. He sacrifices himself to save Jesus from the Antichrist's final attack. The explosion kills both Stan and the Antichrist. Jesus wins the war. Stan earns entry to heaven through his heroic death. The show depicts Stan's personalized heaven as his house, exactly as it was before the rapture. With one exception, Klaus's dead fish body hangs mounted on the wall like a hunting trophy. This detail confirms Klaus died during the apocalypse, and Stan's heaven preserves a memento of his former pet. Then the next episode airs. The family sits together in their house. Klaus swims in his bowl, alive and complaining. Steve and Haley interact with their parents as if nothing happened. No scars on Stan, no war-ravaged landscape outside, no mention of the rapture, Jesus, the Antichrist, or 7 years of global warfare. The timeline reset completely, returning the family to normal life in suburban Virginia with no memory of the apocalypse. The show explains this away by noting Stan's heaven resembles his pre-rapture life. Some fans theorize the entire series after Rapture's delight takes place in Stan's personal heaven. But this theory fails immediately because Klaus is alive in subsequent episodes, despite his corpse being mounted in Stan's heaven. The show cannot be Stan's heaven if it contradicts the heaven the show explicitly depicted. The timeline reset through a different mechanism. The second major apocalypse occurs in Season 11's The 200. Stan goes on a mission to South America. While he is away, some catastrophic event called the Blast destroys civilization. The episode begins with Stan wandering through the ruins of Langley Falls in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Graffiti warns of the 200, a mysterious threat terrorizing survivors. The town lies in ruins. Bodies litter the streets. Savage cannibals hunt other humans for food. Principal Lewis leads a cannibalistic faction that files their teeth to points and eats anyone they capture. Stan searches for his family while avoiding the cannibals. He finds Greg, his neighbor, who explains the family headed to a New Haven safe zone. Along the way, Roger joins them. They discover the safe zone burned and destroyed. Lewis captures them for food. Just before Lewis kills them, Francine, Steve, and Haley rescue Stan. The family reunites as Lewis summons his cannibal army. Then, the 200 arrive, revealed to be 200 physical copies of Roger's personas, made real when Roger accidentally walked into a Hadron Collider. The episode explains the blast through flashback. Roger visited Langley Quantum Labs and wandered into an active Hadron Collider while retrieving his sunglasses. The collision created physical versions of all Roger's personas while generating an electromagnetic pulse that destroyed all electricity globally. The explosion wiped out technology, killed massive numbers of humans, and reduced Earth to a wasteland where survivors fight over scraps. The family faces death between the cannibal army and 200 Rogers. Jeff arrives riding a giant mutated Klaus who has somehow transformed into a dragon-sized monster capable of breathing fire. Klaus destroys both armies. The family escapes and establishes a farm in a lush valley. The episode ends decades later, showing the Smiths and Greg as elderly farmers with large families, having rebuilt civilization from the ashes. Then the next episode airs. The family sits in their house in suburban Langley Falls. Klaus swims in his fishbowl at normal goldfish size. Jeff lives with them as Haley's husband. No farms, no post-apocalyptic wasteland, no elderly versions of the characters. The timeline reset completely, returning everyone to normal life with no memory of the blast, the cannibals, or spending decades as farmers. The show explicitly states the 200 is not canon. Production notes confirm the episode takes place in an alternate timeline that is never seen again. Wikipedia describes it as a previously unseen post-apocalyptic version of Langley Falls. The show treats the apocalypse as a one-off milestone celebration with no lasting consequences. But this non-canon framing raises the critical question. If the show can reset from complete apocalypse, what mechanism allows this reset? The show provides no explanation. Characters do not wake up from dreams. No time travel devices appear. No one realizes they lived through an alternate timeline. The apocalypses happen, civilization ends, years or decades pass, then suddenly, the next episode depicts the pre-apocalypse world as if nothing occurred. This pattern suggests the timeline itself possesses reset functionality built into its structure. Evidence for systematic reset appears in the show's treatment of continuity. American Dad maintains some ongoing storylines. Characters age slowly, relationships evolve, past events get referenced, but the show also regularly produces episodes that fundamentally contradict established reality without explanation. Characters die and return alive. Major events happen and get forgotten. The show operates under flexible continuity, where some changes stick and others vanish. The apocalypse episodes represent the extreme end of this flexibility. Civilization ends completely, but the next episode depicts civilization intact. This only makes sense if the timeline regularly resets to baseline conditions when events deviate too far from acceptable parameters. The apocalypse is pushed beyond acceptable limits. Stan died in Rapture's delight. Decades passed in the 200. These deviations triggered automatic reset to the last stable checkpoint before the apocalypse began. The show hints at this mechanism through Roger's golden turd, which appears in both apocalypse episodes. In Rapture's delight, Jesus finds the golden turd near Boca Raton and uses it to power Roger's spaceship. The turd was supposedly lost, but it appears exactly where needed at the critical moment. In Season 15's episode 300, future Roger contacts past Roger, telling him to hide the turd in Boca Raton after it killed the Smith family through corruption. This creates a causality loop where the turd ends up in Boca Raton because future Roger knew it needed to be there for Jesus to find it during the rapture. But 300 explains that in future Roger's timeline, the rapture never occurred. The apocalypse was averted somehow, yet the turd still ended up in Boca Raton. This contradiction suggests multiple timelines exist simultaneously, with the golden turd serving as an anchor object that appears across different timeline versions. The turd might be the mechanism that tracks timeline variations and triggers resets when specific conditions occur. The show depicts other reality warping events that could explain timeline resets. In Season 3's The Best Christmas Story Never Told, Stan finds a time machine and repeatedly travels to the past trying to fix his mistakes. Each trip creates a new timeline. The episode ends with Stan deciding not to use the time machine, suggesting he learned to accept the current timeline. But the technology exists. CIA possesses functional time travel capability. If the CIA can build time machines, they can build timeline monitoring systems. They might detect apocalyptic events and trigger resets automatically to preserve their organization. The CIA benefits from stable timelines where they maintain power. Apocalypses threaten that stability. An automated reset system would protect CIA interests by preventing permanent catastrophic changes. Stan works for the CIA. His family might be enrolled in a protection program that monitors their timeline and resets it if they experience extinction-level events. This would explain why the family experiences multiple apocalypses without memory. The CIA system detects the apocalypse, waits for it to play out, then resets the timeline to a checkpoint before the triggering event. Everyone's memories reset to match the checkpoint. The apocalypse technically happened in one timeline version, but gets erased when that timeline gets replaced with the baseline version. The family never remembers because their memory states get overwritten with pre-apocalypse versions. Evidence for external monitoring appears in how the show handles Klaus. His body being mounted in Stan's heaven in Rapture's delight confirms Klaus died during that apocalypse. Yet Klaus appears alive in subsequent episodes. If Klaus died and came back, either he was resurrected or the timeline reset to before his death. Resurrection is never mentioned or explained. Timeline reset is the only mechanism that explains Klaus being simultaneously dead in heaven and alive in main continuity. The show also depicts other characters dying and returning without explanation. Characters experience fatal injuries and appear fine next episode. Major events fundamentally alter reality and get forgotten. The show treats death and destruction as temporary conditions that can be reversed through unstated mechanisms. This casual approach to continuity suggests the show's reality operates under rules that allow reversal of catastrophic changes. The 200 provides more evidence through its ending. The episode shows the family decades in the future as elderly farmers with grown children and grandchildren. This represents permanent aging and passage of time. Yet the next episode shows them at their normal ages in their normal house. Time literally rewound, removing decades of aging and returning characters to earlier versions of themselves. This cannot be explained by dreams or imagination. Time actively reversed, reset, or branched into a version where those decades never occurred. The show's treatment of these apocalypses as non-canon acknowledges they happen outside main continuity. But outside main continuity does not mean they did not happen. It means they happened in timeline branches that exist parallel to main continuity. The Smith family simultaneously exists in multiple timeline versions. One version experiences the rapture and ends with Stan in heaven. Another version experiences the blast and ends with the family as elderly farmers. A third version continues as normal suburban life in Langley Falls. With no apocalypses, the question becomes, which version is real? The answer might be, all of them are equally real. The show depicts a multiverse where different timeline versions coexist. The Apocalypse episodes show branches that diverged from main continuity. Those branches are valid timelines where events actually occurred to versions of the Smith family, but those versions exist separately from main continuity. When viewers watch the next episode after an apocalypse, they are not seeing the same timeline recovered. They are seeing a different timeline version that never experienced the apocalypse. This multiverse structure explains why the show can depict world-ending events without lasting consequences. Each apocalypse happens in its own timeline branch. That branch continues existing with its apocalypse intact, but the show's focus returns to the main timeline where no apocalypse occurred. Characters in the main timeline have no memory of apocalypses because they genuinely never experienced them. Only their alternate timeline versions did. Roger might be aware of this multiverse structure. His personas developing independent existence through the Hadron Collider in the 200 proves Roger's biology interacts with fundamental reality in unusual ways. If Roger can create physical copies of his personas, he might also be able to perceive multiple timelines. His casual attitude toward catastrophic events might come from understanding that any apocalypse only affects one timeline branch, while other versions continue normally. The CIA definitely knows about timeline manipulation. They possess time travel technology, consciousness transfer devices, and reality warping weapons. Season 8's For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls shows the CIA tracking Santa Claus across multiple dimensions. If they can navigate dimensions, they can navigate timelines. The organization might actively manage timeline stability, pruning branches that deviate too far into apocalypse territory while maintaining baseline branches where their control remains intact. Stan's role as CIA agent makes him a nexus point in timeline management. The apocalypses both center on events that separate Stan from his family. In Rapture's Delight, Stan abandons Francine immediately after being left behind. In the 200, Stan is away on a CIA mission when the blast occurs. Both apocalypses happen because Stan was not present to prevent or moderate the catastrophic event. This suggests Stan's presence stabilizes the timeline. When he is absent or makes wrong choices, the timeline destabilizes into apocalypse. CIA monitoring systems detect this destabilization and trigger reset protocols. The family will continue experiencing apocalypses because the underlying instability never gets resolved. Whatever makes their timeline prone to catastrophic collapse remains present in the baseline version. Each reset returns to the same initial conditions that led to the previous apocalypse. The system prevents permanent apocalypse, but cannot prevent apocalypses from occurring. The Smiths exist in an endless loop where they periodically experience world-ending disasters, live through the aftermath, then reset to baseline with no memory of what happened. This creates a quiet horror beneath the show's comedy. The family has died in multiple apocalypses. They have lived through years of warfare and devastation. They have aged decades in post-apocalyptic wastelands. Then it all gets erased and they return to suburban life. Unaware they experienced these traumas, their memories get overwritten, their aging gets reversed. Their dead versions remain dead in alternate timelines, while baseline versions continue living. The show will never address this directly. The apocalypse episodes remain labeled non-canon. Future episodes will depict normal family life without referencing past world-ending events, but the evidence exists in the episodes themselves. The Smiths live on a resetting timeline that regularly crashes into apocalypse before reverting to baseline. They are trapped in a cycle of destruction and renewal, experiencing the end of the world over and over while never remembering it happened. The timeline protects them by erasing their memories, but cannot protect them from experiencing apocalypses in the first place. They are simultaneously the most endangered and most protected family on television, dying and resetting in infinite variations across countless timeline branches. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Roger's personas aren't costumes. They're a fractured mind he uses as weapons theory. Roger does not simply wear costumes and play characters. His personas are fragments of a shattered psyche that developed independent consciousness and operate as autonomous psychological weapons he deploys against others. The show presents this as comedy, with Roger changing outfits and adopting silly voices for various schemes. But the evidence reveals something far more disturbing. Roger suffers from dissociative identity disorder on a scale no human could survive. His mind has fractured into hundreds of separate identities, each with complete memories, relationships, and lives. And Roger weaponizes this mental fragmentation, using his personas as disposable personalities he can activate, control, and destroy as needed. The clearest evidence appears in Season 5's The One That Got Away. Roger discovers someone maxed out his credit card. He tracks down the culprit, a man named Sidney Huffman. Roger systematically destroys Sidney's life, getting him fired, ruining his relationship, burning down his apartment, and killing his pet pigeons. Then Roger realizes Sidney is actually one of his own personas. Sidney Huffman was not a disguise Roger consciously created. He was a separate personality that split from Roger's mind and developed completely independent existence without Roger's awareness. The episode reveals through flashbacks how this split occurred. Roger wanted to steal a pair of $10 gloves from a department store. He created the Sidney persona to befriend salesgirl Judy Panowitz and get her keys. But after Judy got blamed for the theft, Roger experienced guilt so intense his mind could not process it. Rather than feel remorse, Roger's psyche fractured. The Sidney personality split off as a separate consciousness to carry the guilt Roger refused to experience. Sidney became real, operating independently with no memory of being Roger. Sidney lived an entire life Roger knew nothing about. He worked as a Bible manufacturer. He maintained an apartment, a garden, relationships with neighbors. He planned to propose to Judy. Sidney existed as a complete person, with personality traits opposite to Roger's. He never drank alcohol. He practiced Christianity devoutly. He treated people with kindness. Sidney was everything Roger is not. Created because Roger's mind needed somewhere to dump the positive emotions and moral constraints that interfered with his sociopathic baseline. The show depicts Roger and Sidney as separate beings. They leave each other voicemail messages. They sabotage each other's lives. Sidney hires a contract killer to murder Roger, not knowing they share the same body. When Roger finally confronts Sidney, the persona appears in mirrors as an independent entity. Sidney argues he is just as valid as Roger. He refuses to give Roger the password to call off the hitman unless Roger acknowledges Sidney's right to exist. This is not role-playing. This is dissociative identity disorder, where alternate personalities develop such strong autonomy they can negotiate with the host personality. Roger eventually stabs Sidney, literally killing his own alternate persona. The episode shows Sidney disappearing when the knife strikes, suggesting Roger reintegrated the split personality through psychological violence. But the method reveals the truth. Roger cannot simply stop being Sidney by taking off a costume. He must actively destroy the alternate personality that developed independent consciousness. The personas are not costumes. They are living fragments of Roger's fractured mind. The show establishes this pattern occurred at least 200 times. In Season 11's The 200, a Hadron Collider accident creates physical copies of all Roger's personas. 200 separate Rogers appear, each embodying a different persona with full autonomy. The episode treats this as unique science fiction caused by the collider, but it actually proves Roger's mind already contained 200 fully formed separate personalities. The collider did not create them. It made visible what already existed in Roger's fractured psyche. Each persona that appears in the 200 is a character Roger previously portrayed. Ricky Spanish, Dr. Penguin, Jeannie Gold, Kevin Bacon, and dozens more. They all march together as an army, each maintaining their distinct personality, voice, and behavior patterns. This proves every persona Roger creates does not disappear when he changes clothes. They persist as active personalities in his fractured mind, waiting to be activated again. Roger maintains 200 simultaneous identities, each living separate lives at any given moment. The show confirms this through multiple episodes depicting personas living independently. Jeannie Gold, Roger's wedding planner persona, has 2 adult sons named Alex and Ronnie, who call him Mom. Jeannie maintains a wedding planning business with clients, advertisements in Mexico, where she also works as a prostitute, and a complete identity separate from Roger's life with the Smiths. The show never explains how Roger has time to raise 2 children to adulthood while living in the Smith attic. The answer is, he does not have time. The Jeannie Gold personality operates autonomously, living her own life, whether Roger is actively playing that character or not. This explains the mechanism behind Roger's persona creation. He is not putting on disguises and acting. He is fragmenting his consciousness into new personalities, giving each piece autonomy and setting them loose to operate independently. Every time Roger creates a new persona, he is deliberately inducing dissociative episodes that split off another piece of his mind. This requires significant psychological trauma to accomplish repeatedly. Roger's species biology might make this process easier, but the end result is identical to severe dissociative identity disorder in humans. The show hints at why Roger's species evolved this capability. In Season 8's episode Roger Needs Dick, when Roger gets sick and cannot maintain his personas, the entire town of Langley Falls descends into chaos. Roger's personas perform crucial jobs, maintain businesses, and provide services the community depends on. Without Roger actively managing these personalities, the social infrastructure collapses. This proves Roger's fractured mind serves a practical purpose. He can be in multiple places simultaneously by creating alternate personalities to handle different aspects of social integration. For Roger's species, this fractured mind strategy offers evolutionary advantages. A single alien can infiltrate human society by generating dozens of personas that operate in different locations. Each persona builds relationships, gathers intelligence, and establishes infrastructure, while the original personality maintains plausible deniability. Roger's species evolved as infiltrators, who survive on hostile worlds by fragmenting their consciousness and embedding multiple personalities into local populations. But this strategy requires weaponizing mental illness. Roger deliberately fractures his psyche every time he creates a persona. He experiences genuine dissociative episodes where pieces of his consciousness split off and develop autonomy. The personas become real to the point where they can surprise Roger, deceive him, and even attack him like Sidney Huffman did. Roger lives in a constant state of identity crisis where he is simultaneously hundreds of different people, none of whom trust or coordinate with each other. The show depicts Roger accessing these personas like changing channels. He puts on a costume and instantly becomes that personality with complete memories, skills, and emotional states. This is not acting. This is switching between alternate personalities stored in different sections of his fractured mind. When Roger becomes Ricky Spanish, he accesses the psychological fragment containing Ricky's memories and personality. When he becomes Jeannie Gold, he switches to the fragment containing her identity. The costumes serve as triggers that help Roger select which personality to activate. This explains why Roger's personas can control him. In Season 13's Persona Assistant, Stan puts on the Ricky Spanish costume and becomes completely possessed by that personality. The Ricky Spanish fragment is so powerful, it can take over anyone who wears the triggering costume. This proves the personas exist as independent psychological entities with their own agency. They are not performances Roger controls. They are autonomous personalities that can assert dominance when given opportunity. The episode also reveals that Stan wearing Ricky Spanish was actually Stan wearing Roger's skin suit, which Roger created to allow humans to become his personas. This skin suit acts as a psychic interface, allowing the personas to possess other people. Roger has developed technology to externalize his fractured mind, letting others access the personality fragments he created. This is weaponization at its most explicit. Roger can now infect other minds with pieces of his shattered psyche. Roger treats his personas as tools he can deploy strategically. When he needs a skilled assassin, he becomes one of his violent personas. When he needs sympathy, he accesses a vulnerable persona. When he needs to commit crimes, he uses personas with no moral constraints. Each fragment of his fractured mind serves a specific function. Roger is not one person wearing different masks. He is hundreds of people sharing one body, each developed for particular tactical purposes. This weaponization shows most clearly in how Roger uses personas to evade consequences. When his actions cause problems, he simply switches personas and denies responsibility. The person who committed the crime is technically a different identity. Roger can honestly say he does not remember doing terrible things because a different personality fragment was active when they occurred. His fractured mind provides perfect deniability. No single persona can be held accountable because none of them control Roger's actions all the time. The show reveals Roger's control over his personas is tenuous at best. Multiple episodes show Roger surprised by his persona's actions or unaware of what they did. In The Horse Whisperer, Roger realizes seconds before walking into a room that he is the horse therapist inside, suggesting he forgot he created that persona. The personalities operate with such autonomy that even Roger loses track of which ones exist and what they are doing. His fractured mind has become so fragmented he no longer knows himself. This creates a nightmare scenario for everyone around Roger. They cannot predict which personality will be active at any moment. The Roger who sits at breakfast might switch to a violent persona by dinner. The friendly persona Stan talks to might suddenly shift to Ricky Spanish, the most hated man in town. Every interaction with Roger is interaction with a fractured mind that could deploy any of 200 different personalities without warning. He is fundamentally unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous because his identity shifts constantly. The show treats this as comedy, with Roger's persona switches creating humorous situations, but the psychology is horrifying. Roger experiences constant identity disruption on a scale that would destroy human sanity. He maintains no consistent sense of self. His memories fragment across hundreds of personalities. His emotions split into separate identities that experience them independently. He is not one person with many faces. He is many people trapped in one body, fighting for control, with no dominant personality strong enough to integrate them. The evidence suggests Roger might not even be the original personality. When Roger creates personas, he is not pretending to be someone else. He is creating actual new identities by fragmenting his existing consciousness. Each split takes away pieces of whoever Roger was before. After 200 splits, how much of the original Roger remains? He might be just another persona, the one that mistakenly believes it is the core identity, when really, it is just the oldest fragment in a completely shattered mind. This explains Roger's cruelty and sociopathy. A fractured mind cannot maintain moral consistency. The personality fragments each develop their own ethics independently. Some personas, like Sidney Huffman, are devoutly moral. Others, like Ricky Spanish, are completely evil. Roger himself falls somewhere between, cruel and selfish, but occasionally capable of kindness. His behavior appears inconsistent because it is inconsistent. Different personality fragments have control at different times, each with their own moral framework. The show confirms Roger's species is designed for this fractured existence. In Persona Assistant, Roger develops a tumor that becomes Rogu, a homunculus his species created to handle workload overflow. Roger's body automatically generated a physical helper when his consciousness became too fragmented to manage all his personas. This proves Roger's species has biological mechanisms to support fractured minds. They evolved to split their consciousness deliberately, creating multiple identities as a survival strategy. But surviving through fractured identity comes at the cost of unified self. Roger will never know who he really is because no single core identity exists. He is the sum of 200 personalities, none dominant, all competing for control of one body. His mind is a battlefield where different versions of himself fight constantly. The personas are his weapons, yes, but they are also his prison. He cannot escape them because they are all he is. Roger weaponizes his mental illness by accepting it fully. Rather than seek integration or healing, he embraces fragmentation as a tool. He creates new personas deliberately, inducing dissociative episodes on demand. He deploys different personalities for different purposes, treating his fractured mind like an arsenal of psychological weapons. Each persona serves as a disposable identity he can sacrifice, corrupt, or destroy when convenient. He is actively worsening his mental condition to gain tactical advantages. This makes Roger one of the most psychologically damaged characters in television. His mind is not broken metaphorically. It is literally shattered into hundreds of pieces, each piece alive and autonomous. The personas are not performances. They are real people trapped in fragments of Roger's consciousness, unaware they are incomplete. Sidney Huffman thought he was a complete person until Roger killed him. Jeannie Gold raises children, unaware she is a psychological weapon. Every persona Roger creates is a new life suffering in the prison of his fractured mind. The show never addresses the horror of Roger's condition, because acknowledging it would destroy the comedy, but the evidence is overwhelming. Roger's personas are not costumes. They are living pieces of a shattered psyche he deploys as weapons against a world he cannot face as a unified self. He is not one alien wearing disguises. He is 200 fragments, pretending to be one person, using each other as shields, attacking each other as enemies, and slowly destroying whatever core identity once existed through endless psychological fracture. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.